Okay, so Shabbat Shalom and welcome to the World Alliance of Qara'im weekly Torah study. I'm Yaakov in Yisrael, and this Shabbat we'll be reading through Parashath Terumah. That'll be Exodus chapter 25, starting at the first verse. And as usual, I will wait just a few minutes for people to show up. Usually I'll start reading at about 5 minutes into the broadcast. So I'll ask if I have good sound, if you will type a 1 in the comment section so that I know that I have good sound. If not, please type a 2. Shabbat Shalom, La Pamela. Thank you for joining us, and thank you for letting me know about the sound. I have my Bluetooth in. It's always a problem with the Bluetooth connection. I hate using the earphones because it just aggravates the crap out of me. So hopefully the Bluetooth will work. Today is going to be a pretty interesting parasha. We're going to be reading about the articles of the Mishkan and the construction of it. A lot of it's going to be redundant, but it's good to know. If we're ever fortunate enough to end the rabbinic corruption in the land of Israel so that we can actually rebuild the Mishkan and get the temple service restarted, then it would be a great thing to know how to construct. In fact, I think a lot of the stuff for the temple has already been constructed. I think there's a group called the Temple Institute. I think I forgot the name of the rabbi there, but they've already got, from what I understand, all of the items constructed, the clothing of the Kohanim. Shabbat Shalom, James, and thank you for joining the program today. The only thing they have to wait on is for the rabbinic control and the chokehold over the Temple Mount to go away. Then they can begin to construct the temple and put the Kohanim in their offices. It's a sad thing Okay, hopefully that did the trick. Shabbat Shalom, Shalom. Hopefully everyone can hear me now. I had to put my trusty old earphones in. I hate these things. I wish the Bluetooth would work fine, but that's technology for you. But what I was saying is that we have this current idea of Judaism that everyone has to wait for some Mashiach to arrive before they begin work on the temple. And you know, we have an instruction manual. We have a guide for how the Israelites did certain things in certain situations historically, and it's called the Tanakh. And in part of the Tanakh, we have the exile that began under the control of Babylon, and then it was handed off to Persia, and then under the Persian authorities, the Israelites were allowed to return. And what was the first thing that they did? They told everybody, sit down, shut up, make 3 prayers a day, and pray that the Mashiach comes so that they can begin working on the Mishkan, which is absolutely absurd. The first thing they did was they sanctified the Kohanim. They got the altar constructed so that they can begin the sacrificial system and get the what's called the waters of separation, which is how one becomes purified from contacting the dead. And they laid the foundation of the temple, and they had it constructed without any king. Okay, without any king. Of course, Zerubbabel was there. He was from the line of David, but he was only a governor who was under the authority of the Persian government. And, you know, that's our example. We don't need a king Messiah to come so that the temple could be rebuilt. That's complete hogwash and nonsense. We have a Mashiach. The only Mashiach that the Torah even talks about is the Kohen Gadol, or actually the Kohanim, because Aaron and his 4 sons were also anointed. And, you know, so I find it really sad that, you know, we had under rabbinical rule, the Jews prayed 3 times a day, morning, noon, and evening, that it be rebuilt in our day. And after about 2,000 years of exile, when Adonai finally gave the Jewish people the land back, gave them control of the Temple Mount, saved them from the armies of all their enemies, what was the first thing they did? Instead of doing what the Israelites did when they came back from exile in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, they gave it back to Jordan. They basically decided, we don't need it, because of course this magical Mashiach will float down out of heaven, crap the temple out of his ass onto the Temple Mount, and then collect all the Jews from around the world, which is complete nonsense. So since that time, they haven't had a moment's peace. And they won't. Okay, that's my rant for today. It's now 10 minutes after, and we're going to begin in Exodus 25, and we're going to start at the first verse, and so I will begin to read. If you have any questions, just post the questions there. Just know there's a delay from the time you post comments either at Facebook or YouTube before I actually see them here. So I'll stop from time to time and I will answer the questions. So, وَيَذَبَّرْ Adonai il Moshe lemor, and so Adonai spoke to Moses, saying, دبر إلى بني إسرائيل ويقح لي ترماه مئات كل إيش أشر يدفنوا لبو تقحو et terumathi. Speak to the children of Israel that they collect or that they take up for me an offering. This is terumah. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall collect my offering. وزوت الترمة أشر تقحو مئتام ذهب وخسف ونخوشف. And these, or this, is the offering which you shall collect from them. Gold and silver and nechosheth can be copper or bronze or brass. Verse 4. وثخيلت وأرجمان وثلاعت شني والشيش وعزيم. And blue, this is the Techeleth. This, of course, this Techeleth that we're supposed to have in our seat. This is this blue here. And purple, this is Argaman. And Thola'at Shani. Now, this is often translated as scarlet, but what it literally means is Thola'at. Thola'a is a worm. In fact, we see this in the chapter 16 of Exodus, where they were given manna for the first time, and they kept some that they shouldn't have kept, and it began to have worms. This is this word Thola'at. And so Shani is scarlet, and so basically it says worms of scarlet. So there has often been a debate there was often a debate about the Techelet. I think it's called the Hilazon, which is what the rabbinics say it comes from some sort of sea creature. I don't know exactly what it is. But anyway, a common debate was that this sea creature was unclean, and so it couldn't be used to make this Techelet. And I've always countered by saying, well, what about Thola'at Shani, that is talking specifically about a worm, which is also equally unclean. But anyway, then we have Sheish, which is linen, and Azim, which is goat hair. First off, now before we go, we have a comment by Shiloh Levine. He says, according to the Rambam and Radak in their day, no Gentile structure was built upon where the temple stood. You know, I really don't care what was built upon it. They won it in war, and they could have wiped it out. All right, that's just an excuse, and it doesn't hold any water. At the time that Israel won that, the control of the Temple Mount, if they would have raised the Dome of the Rock to the ground and took all those Islamic structures away, of course they would have been, hey, what have you done? But they could have done it at that time. Now it would be a little difficult to make the same move, but they won it in war. They could have destroyed it. An alternative would be, since they had won control over it, they could have deconstructed it. They could have taken it apart very respectfully and moved it somewhere else and built the temple. So there's many things that they could have done, but what did they opt to do? Believe in a fairy tale and give it back to their enemies. They spat in the face of God. So I don't accept that excuse. Anyway, everyone has their own opinion about it. That's mine. So verse 5, the Aroth Aileen at Damim, وعروض تخشيم وعدس شتيم. So now we have another excuse from Shiloh. The Temple Mount was that we say today is not actually the site. Yeah, I guess archaeology determines what we do from now on, but it could be. Who knows? I don't care. Any excuse is better than no excuse, I guess. So, ram skin, me'addamim. Some translate this as red, but it's basically an earth color. If red is what you think that means, and that's fine. And Urut Hashim. Now, a lot of people, I think they translate Techash as dolphin skin in some places. That's nonsense. Techash is just simply a work leather or a work skin, as well as Shittim, which is acacia wood. Verse 6, Shemen Lamaor, Besamim Lashemen Hamishcha, Waliktoreth Hasamim, as well as oil for the light. This is for the menorah, which we'll learn about in just a few minutes. Besamim, which is spices for the anointing oil. And according to Torah, this is how one becomes Mashiach, is to be anointed with this oil. As well as for the sweet incense. Verse 7, Avnei Shocham wa Avnei Miluim la'ephod wa la'choshen. Onyx stones is Avnei Shocham. We see that in Parashath, chapter 2, I think it is. Talking about some of the stones that were in or near one of the 4 rivers that came out of Eden. And then it says stones miluim. Miluim has to do with being set or filled into these sockets of the ephod. And then it says for the ephod, as well as the choshen. The choshen is the breastplate that the Kohen Gadol would wear with the different stones bearing the names of Israel. And this is the most important part that I like to point out to everyone. Talmudic story. So here's his comment now. It says, no excuse. You base your opinion on the Talmudic story that it was on the mount. Good luck. Okay. My excuse, I guess, or my reply to that would be, we know that the mountain where they say the Temple Mount stands is Mount Moriah. I don't think anyone would debate that. Of course, Shiloh might debate that. Don't know who else would debate it, perhaps. That it has to stand exactly where Solomon's temple stood, I don't buy that. There's nothing that says it has to stand there. That's just where David decided to build it, but there is no commandment that it has to stand exactly where David said it should. It's not there. Anywhere on that mount would be fine, that you would have room for it. So my idea would be to erase all the pagan influences on the Temple Mount and build the Mishkan. And this is why. That they build for me a sanctuary, and I shall dwell amongst them. Shabbat Shalom, Melech.
Shabbat Shalom. What's up?
Parashath Terumah.
Cool. Where are we?
So, I just read verse 8. That's 25, verse 8.
Exodus 25:8. Okay.
Yeah.
1 second. Exodus 25:8. You say. Exodus 25:8. Exodus 25:8. Okay. Exodus 25:8. Let's see what we got here. Masuli Mikdash v'shachanti pitocham. An oldie but a goodie.
So, verse 9. ככל אשר אני מראה אותך את תבנית המשכן ואת תבנית כל כליו וכן תעשו.
Proof of the oral law, right there.
Yeah. According to all that I am showing you, the design of the Mishkan and the design of its articles, so shall you do, or so shall you make. Verse 10. وعصوا أرون عدسي شتيم أمثايم وحيتي أركو وأما وحيتي رحبو وأما وحيتي قمثو. Yeah, I hear you.
Oh, sugar. Hello?
Hello.
Yeah. I was having a problem with the internet. So this is proof. This is what the Rabbinites often use as proof of the oral law. This verse right here.
Yeah, that's very clear. And they shall make a Aaron.
Wait. Verse 9 is important to discuss.
Well,
because it does show that not everything proof that there is an oral law, because there it says that Moshe will be shown things that are not in the written Torah. So that implies there are things that are not in the written Torah. He's going to show him exactly how he wants it done.
Yeah.
So, how would we respond to that as Karaites?
Have at it. You explain it.
Well, I think there is something to be said about. I think that our arguments often against the Rabbinites are too simplistic, as I pointed out to Alan Goldenthal in my response to him last week. I think it is possible to say that that there is. I mean, we have evidence of a so-called, you can call it oral law, like the daughters of Tzalafchad, right? They Moshe went to ask God what to do in that particular case, and God gave him the answer. So I think there is an idea of ongoing contact between the nation of Israel and Yehovah, and if we say there's not, then again we open ourselves up to this simplistic attack from the Rabbinites. So we have to understand, I think, what the Rabbinites actually did. They took this idea that there is contact outside of the written Torah, right? Not everything is 100% in the written Torah. There is contact basically through prophecy, or maybe through the Urim V'Tumim, and they ran with that, and now they basically said that they used that fact as a method of saying that they can now do whatever they want, pretty much, with the Torah, that they can make their own oral law. So it's kind of like they were given an inch, and God gave us an inch, and the rabbis took a foot, or a mile, or maybe a couple 100,000 miles apart. Maybe they took a parsang. I don't know, but you understand what I'm saying? So again, for us to say that there's no contact or no innovation in the Torah, that nothing changes over time, is patently false. We see that already in the Torah itself. So you can call that an oral law, but that doesn't mean that tefillin is part of that oral law, right? So we have to answer the rabbis intelligently, I think, and we have to say not that there's no such thing as what I guess in broad sense can be called an oral law, but to distinguish between what actually is a, quote unquote oral law, or what is actually added to the Torah through proper means such as prophecy, and those things which are then taken advantage of by the rabbis to basically make completely new laws. So each thing has to be assessed based on its own merits or lack thereof. So tefillin, clearly, if you research that issue, it's clear that it came up in Second Temple period times. That it was a rabbinical innovation that was based on local customs or local traditions of amulets, and that it has no evidence whatsoever going back to the time of the Tanakh. But if you take another law such as the daughters of Tzalafchad, then that's clear that it did make it into the written Torah, but not but it was, you can call it an addendum. It's clear that was an oral or an addition to the Torah, quote unquote, that was sanctioned by God Himself. So what I'm saying is that each thing has to be kind of assessed individually, and that it's too simplistic to say that there's no contact with Yehovah outside the Torah. The classic case would be Jerusalem. Jerusalem is never mentioned in the 5 books of Moses, not even once, and yet that place was chosen later on as the place where Yehovah would have his name rest, or have His presence rest, as we're speaking about right here. So that came through later prophecy. That basically came through prophecy to King David, and so we see that that's in a certain sense part of the oral law. But obviously, washing your hands 3 times with a bucket of water before you after you take a crap, and then saying a stupid bracha that was made up by Shmuel HaKatan in the 2nd century CE is not part of the legitimate contact between Am Yisrael and Yehovah. So that's what I have to say on the topic. So would you say there's a certain level or amount of oral law? Yeah, again, see the rabbis. You have to understand why the rabbis call the oral law the oral law. By the way, can you hear me, Yaakov?
I hear you fine.
Okay. Hold on a second. I want to ask Hakham Lavi. What do you think, Hakham Lavi? This is a very, very smart, brilliant cat. Okay, hold on. He's whispering to me the answer. Hold on. Okay, I got it. So, you have to understand why the rabbis call the oral law the oral law. And the reason they call the oral law is because they have no written evidence for it. So they can it's like a psychic. You go to some psychic and you pay them $10, and they say, "Oh, I just had a vision. You will win you'll have great riches come to you in the next year, right? Oh, what's your evidence for that? What's your written evidence for that? Oh, I have no written evidence for that. It came to me, right? So all these things just came to the rabbis. Again, I'll use the example of tefillin. It just came to the rabbis because they were basically trying to imitate the goyim around them, who were putting on these stupid amulets for their gods. So how are you going to sell this stupid amulet, bullshit, to the nation of Israel? Oh, there's no written proof for it in the Torah, except ot al yadecha v'totafot ben einecha, which obviously doesn't mean that for anyone who isn't completely brainwashed by the rabbinical cult. So you say, oh, yes, it's been with us it's always been with us for thousands of years. Oh, really? Let's see the written proof for that. Where's the written proof for that? Well, there is no written proof. It's been passed down orally. So So you have to understand that the rabbis use the oral law as a catchphrase to basically implement anything that they want, any law that they want. They just called it an oral law as a way of hiding the fact that they really have no written historical evidence for it. So that's number one. So it's not really an oral law at all. That's why I always, when I say the rabbinical oral law, I always put it in lowercase and I always surround it by quotes, because it's not really an oral law. It was never passed down from generation to generation. Okay. However, there are things that are legitimate oral law if we define the oral law correctly. Okay, the oral law, as defined correctly, could be clarifications, never contradictions to the Torah, but clarifications of the Torah as given from Yehovah through legitimate prophets, not through these fake rabbis who came along in the during Greek times, but who were given information through legitimate prophets. Again, just as King David was told to purchase the field from, who was it again? I always forget the name. Purchase the field anyway that in Jerusalem, which was later to become the site of the Temple Mount, right? So that's legitimate addition to the Torah, never contradiction, but addition to the Torah through the proper channels of prophecy, of the Urim V'Tumim, and even of tradition. We have in the Book of Ruth, for instance, it says that in order to purchase the fields of Elimelech, that it says it was tradition in Israel to remove the shoe, and if I remember correctly, to remove the shoe, and the other person grabs hold of the shoe. Okay, that's not mentioned anywhere in the Torah, but that's tradition. It's not oral law in the sense of being passed through prophecy. It's tradition that was that grew up in Israel. So there is, and it's not binding, obviously. But obviously, no one's taking off their shoes and to purchase a wife these days. In fact, you have to probably buy the wife plenty of shoes these days. But at any rate, there are legitimate things that stretch back all the way to ancient times, to very ancient times, which are not mentioned in the written Torah anywhere. In the Torah, maybe they're mentioned later on in the Tanakh, but they're not mentioned in the written Torah anywhere. But the rabbis take advantage of this fact and create this myth of the oral law to then bring in a whole bunch of other, laws which have no basis whatsoever anywhere in the Torah, in the Tanakh, in prophecy, or anything like that. Again, let's say tefillin or whatever the case may be, saying all the stupid pre-written brachas that they make in Second Temple period times. So it's kind of like, let's say, immigration. Okay. Oh, yes. You can come into the United States if you have a very serious case where you're being oppressed in your country, but then it's used for millions of people to come in the United States. They just use that little opening to completely change the nature of the country. So likewise, the rabbis use the fact that yes, there is an ongoing conversation between hello, hello, hello. 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 I don't even know if I'm on. Hello? Am I back?
Yeah, you weren't gone.
Oh.
I muted my mic and turned off my camera so I can do a few things.
Oh. Anyway, that's kind of it. And so Guy Regev says problem is that the Karaite website just says no oral law, so that's confusing. Yeah, well that's the kindergarten version. The real version is a bit more subtle and complicated than that. Anyway, I hope I made the point, and just something to think about. Hello. Yeah. No. Anybody home? Anybody home? I don't even know if I'm on. Yaakov?
Yep. We're on verse 10, Melech. I got
All
some
right,
things
verse
I'm
10.
going to do, so just continue to read from verse 10. You're still on. Everyone hears you. It's okay.
Atzei Shittim.
Yeah.
2.5 ארכו, 1.5 רחבו, ו1.5 קומתו. Okay, so it's supposed to be done out of acacia wood. If you go to the southern part of Israel, especially, you'll see lots of acacia trees, or what they believe is acacia trees. And we saw a lot of acacia trees last time I was in Israel. We saw a lot of acacia trees, and we went to visit Timna Park. And if you're ever in Israel and are down in Eilat, I highly recommend visiting Timna Park. Because it's beautiful. It's about maybe half an hour, 45 minutes north of Eilat. You can do it on your way back to wherever you flew in from, or Jerusalem or Tel Aviv or whatever. And there they have a life-size replica of the Mishkan, and very, very interesting, a very interesting talk. They give a very interesting presentation there, and so you could see all this stuff in action. It's actually supposed to be to scale. So, well, at any rate, so acacia, it grows wild down in Timna Park and in other parts of southern Israel. So that's what we're talking about. Acacia tree. I don't know how I could put on the screen a picture of an acacia tree, but I guess if you look it up, then you can find it yourself. Okay, so we've got 2.5 ארכו, 1.5 רחבו, ו1.5 קומתו. So it's 2.5 amah. Amah, they say, is the distance between the tip of the middle finger and the elbow. So let's see if I can get back on here. I'll get my. Oh, what's going on? Hello? I have no idea what's going on. I'll assume that that people can hear me, even though I don't know where Yaakov went. It says everyone can see and hear you. Okay, I'll have to believe that's the case. At any rate, so actually, if you can see me right now, could you just post something in Facebook so I can see the messages there? I really don't like this platform. Hello? Hello? Yeah. So yeah. So the amah is the distance. Let's see if I can do this correctly. So it's this distance from here to here. They say it comes out to about 1.5 feet. So generally, an amah is considered a 1.5 feet. Half. There we go. And so you could do the math for yourself. At any rate, we do see that it's as וציפית אותו זהב טהור מבית ומחוץ. So you'll basically plate it or cover it with gold. Not plate it, because plate it actually has a specific meaning, which is electroplating, which means it's supplied by electric current. So not plated, but you'll cover it with gold, pure gold, from mibet chutz, from inside and from outside. Titzapena, you shall titzapenu. It's the same word as vitzipita. Okay, michutz titzapena, so you should cover it. Vasita alav zer zahav saviv, and you should put it upon it a zer would be, I think they usually translate it as a chain. Let me look it up here. A circlet, border. The BDB also says circlet or border. Wreath, crown, bracelet, ring. So I guess kind of like a kind of a decorative border around it, from inside and from outside. I'm going to get my computer so I can make this a little bit easier, and I could also get comments from Facebook. So just bear with me for 1 second here. Let's see. If we go on to the next verse. In the meantime, so it's got this gold border around it. Arba tabaot zahav ונתת על 4 פעמותיו ושתי טבעות על צלעו האחד ושתי טבעות על צלעו השנית. So, where were we? Yatzak lo arba tabaot. So yatzak is to cast. So now we're going to cast some gold. We're going to do some gold casting, right? Which means melting the gold and then pouring it into a mold, right? So that was a technique, obviously, that was available even back then. Yatzak lo arba tabaot zahav. So you're gonna cast these 4 rings, okay? And again, here we're talking about the Aron. This is going to be the ark, where the Ark of the Covenant. And so we need these 4 rings, because into these 4 rings are going to go the carrying poles, and that's how the ark is going to be. That's how. Oh, Yaakov is back. Yaakov, you back?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hello. All right. So why don't you take over while I set up my computer, and then I can be a little bit more adept on this Streamyard technology. So I was just doing verse 11.
Verse 11. Let's see. And so you shall cover it with pure gold from inside, and from out you shall cover it, and you shall make upon it zer zahav saviv, which is a rim, a golden rim around it.
Okay.
ويسقت له 4 تبعات ذهب ونثت على 4 פעמותיו ושתי טבעות על סלעו האחד ושתי טבעות על סלעו השנית. And you shall cast for it 4 rings of gold, and you shall set upon it upon the 4 sides, and 2 rings upon the one side and 2 rings upon the second side. Right. This word pa'am is going to be equated to paya later on in the same context. And you'll also see another word. I can't remember which one it was, but I'll remind you when we get there. Verse 13.
Yeah, if I could just point out. So so that's a very specific word. And let's see. I'm just trying to find it here in the BDB. So they usually translate it as corner.
What, pa'am?
Pa'am, yeah.
Yeah, it can mean times. It can mean sides, or it can mean corners. Or it can also, I think it's used in one context for the different legs of something.
Right.
In fact, later on, it talks about it being the uses the word regal.
Yeah, I think it basically means times, but by extension corners, because it's clear that it has, right, by context.
Yeah, that's what I just said. Later on, it's going to be equated with paya.
Right. So this is kind of a general word, which in this context means corners, because we see al-arba pamotav, right? 4. So obviously there are 4 corners. And then it says shtei tabaot al tzila'o echad shtei tabaot al tzila'o hashinit. So tzela is usually it's a side, right? It's the same word that's used for the part of Adam that was taken to make a Hava, to make Adam that was taken to make Eve. So it's usually translated as a rib, although that translation is suspect. But here clearly it means the two sides on each side. So just to keep it in mind,
in
so we're
verse
going to see when these very technical. What?
in verse 11, this first word, Safita, this is from Safa. That's one of those homonyms. The word Safa means Lisfok means to see, to look, or to watch something.
Right.
And a Sofa is a watchman.
Right.
But you have a homonym that's spelled the same way.
Right.
Which means to cover, to overlay something.
Right. Overlay. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah. Correct. Yeah. Safa, that has nothing to do with. I agree with you there. It has absolutely nothing to do with Sofer, meaning to see or to scope. In Jerusalem, Jerusalem today, there's Har Tzofim, Mount Scopus, which comes from the word Tzofeh, right? Har Tzofim. That's where the university is. Anywho, so
verse 13.
Yeah.
وعصيت بديعة سيشتيم وستبيث أثام زهاب. And so you shall make wooden acacia poles, and you shall overlay them with gold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a lot of gold.
It is a lot of gold, and it all came from donations.
Yeah. Verse 14. وهذيث et habadim بالتبعوث على صلاعوت هارون لسيت et هارون بهم. And you shall bring the poles into the rings upon the sides of the Aron to carry the Aron with them. Now, this is what I wanted to say something about the Aron. I don't know if you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Anything about Aron. Aron is basically you could say it in modern terms as a coffin, but it's basically an ossuary. And the first time we are introduced to this word is in the narrative about Joseph when he died. It said that they embalmed him and put him in an Aron. And that's what
even in modern Hebrew, Aron is, Aron can mean, when they talk about a coffin, they use the word Aron.
It could also mean a closet too, I think, in modern Hebrew.
In modern Hebrew, it also
means a closet.
Means a closet. It's just the. Purpose.
Verse 15. بتبعوت هارون يحيوا هبدين lo yasuru b'minu. And so the poles shall be in the rings of the Aron, and they shall not be taken out from it. ونثت إل هارون إت هعيدوث أشير إتين إليها. And you shall set in the Aron the testimony which I shall give to you. And the testimony, it's interesting because the Mishkan is called the Mishkan Ha'eduth. The Aron is called the Aron Ha'eduth. I'm trying to think. I think in fact the entire Mishkan and its articles in various ways. I have to look it up. I had them all wrote down once where it talks about how the Mishkan itself is called the Mishkan Ha'eduth, the Ohel is called the Ohel Ha'eduth, and so forth. And the focal point is the tablets of law, which are the Eduth, which is what we'll see later. And I think
we also have to remember that the tent is called, where Moses meets with God, is called the Ohel HaMoed, right?
Yeah, the
Which comes from the same root essentially. And so aid is basically means an aid is a witness that's used explicitly many times in the Tanakh, and the edut is the testimony, right? So these these tablets of stone serve as a proof or as a testimony of the interaction between the communication between Yehovah and the nation of Israel, and that's what it's talking about. That's why this physical object was given to Moses to serve as a sign, to serve as a symbol, or to serve as a testimony that Yehovah spoke to Moses. So everything is surrounding this basically this gift. I mean, can we ever think of? I'm trying to think. Was there ever anything else made explicitly by God that was given to human beings as a gift or as a testimony? I can't think of anything offhand. I'm sure there's something somewhere, but this is a really unique thing that God basically carved idea, and so it serves as the testimony or as the proof of this communication between the nation of Israel and Yehovah.
Yeah. So verse 17. وعسيت كبورث زحاب طهور أمثايم وخيتسي أركا وأما وخيتسي رحبة. And so you shall make a covering of pure gold, 2 cubits and a half it shall be its length, and a cubit and a half shall be its width. Verse 18. وعسيت الشنايم كروبيم زحاب مكشة عسي أثام مشني كسود حكبورث. And you shall make 2 cabbages of gold. 2 golden cabbages, one on each side, of hammered work. Now, I'm making a joke. Kerev is a cabbage in modern Hebrew. But here it's talking about the cherubs.
Yeah.
But it says, you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Miksha is talking about a hammered work. That's one of the rare words used in the Tanakh. It's only used a few times.
And if I could just
of hammered work, you shall make.
Sorry, go ahead.
Of hammered work, you shall make them. And from the 2 ends, or the 2 ends of the covering, at the 2 ends of the covering.
Right. Now, kruvim is as Yaakov translated into English, is cherubim, and the word cherubim clearly comes. Its etymology is the Hebrew word kruvim. So there's another example of an English word that comes directly from the Hebrew.
Yeah. Verse 19. وعسى كروف وعسى كروف أحد مقصة مزاي وكروف أحد مقصة مزاي من حكبورث تعسوءة كروفيم على شني كصفار. So make 1 cherub on this side and 1 cherub from this side. From the covering, you shall make the cherubim on its 2 sides. So to me, it seems that the lid and the cherubim have to be all made of 1 piece. That's the way it seems to me.
That's exactly. Yeah, it's got to be mikshechad. It has to be a single. It's got to be a single piece of gold.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think. Wait a second, if I can remember. I can't remember offhand, but there are other places I think where other things are mentioned that have to be a single piece of gold as well. But I guess we'll get to it. Okay.
So verse 20, وحيوا الكروبيم פורסי כנפיים למעלה שוחחים בכנפיהם על הכפורת ופניהם איש אל אחיו אל הכפורת יהיו פני הכרובים. And so the cherubim shall be stretching out their two wings above. And it has this word sochech, which actually means to cover in a protecting manner. It means to protect with their wings.
It's the same word where we get the word sukkah from.
Yeah, and so it talks about a covering, but it's more of like a protective covering, or they shall be covering or protecting with their wings the covering. So you have.
Yeah, go ahead. And then I'll say a couple of things.
So the cherubim will be stretching out their two wings above, and then also with these two wings, covering or in a protective manner the covering itself. And as we'll see in just a minute, they're going to be basically looking at each other, but bent over with their faces toward the covering itself, and so their two wings will be stretched out over it.
So if I could say a couple of things here. So right. So first of all, we have the word sochachim, right, which is translated as covering, basically. It's the same word. It's the same root as the word sukkah, which is why the rabbis emphasize in a sukkah that the idea is that it has to have a covering, right? They always say it has to have a covering, and that you should be able to see the stars. But really, what a sukkah is when it's used in that context is it's just a booth. We see it many times that it says in the book of Ruth, even I believe it uses it. No, is it in the book of Ruth? No, it's not in the book of Ruth, but it might be actually. But the sukkah was basically a hut that was built out in the fields where people could stay and keep an eye on the crops during the harvest time. And yes, the word sukkah comes from the fact that that it was a protective covering from the elements, right? Because that's what it was used for. Basically, like a hut or like a lookout post. But at the end of the day, it's just a hut, you know. I don't think the emphasis needs to be necessarily on the covering, although yes, obviously huts will have coverings to protect from the elements. So that's one point I wanted to make. The other point I wanted to make is that so the kaporet is the covering, as Yaakov mentioned, and this is the same root as the word kippur. And if you want to find out what the connection is between covering kofer and which is kafar, which is in the pa'al, the simple tense of the verb, and kippur, which is the PL, it's the kippur. I think it's called the gerund or something. I can't remember exactly what
it's like a verbal noun or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. It's the noun that derived from the verb of lichaper, which basically means to atone for. So if you want to see that connection, at least as I envision it, you're welcome to read my article about Yom Kippurim on KaraiteInsights.com. But at any rate, it's just to point out that kofer is the same root as kippur. Is there connection between this kaporet and kippur? I don't think there's any direct connection, except maybe a play on words. But it is interesting to point out that Yom Kippurim, which we think of as a holiday for our repentance, is actually the main point of Yom Kippurim is repentance for the temple. It's repentance for any impurities that may have been introduced into the temple during the year, and that's why you have the whole purification process of the temple, where the Kohen Gadol goes inside for the only time during the year, goes inside the inner curtain and throws blood on the Aron, and this is basically a purification ritual for the temple, which may have been non-deliberately or deliberately impurified throughout the year. And this is this is in number 16. I think this is all mentioned in degree. So there might be a play on words here between Kippur and Kaporet, because Yom Kippurim is basically the cleansing of the temple, and particularly the Kaporet, because on the Kaporet, as we know, are the Kruvim. Between the Kruvim, where the wings meet or where their faces meet, is where Yehovah actually dwells, quote unquote, on this planet. So that's the holiest of holies. So, all right. Another thing I want to point out is Pneim Ish El Achiv. So each one's face is pointing literally towards his brother, but obviously they're not brothers. So it just points out again that the word brother, ach, does not always mean brother. It just means companion, or in many contexts, when speaking about family, it means kin. So it doesn't always mean brother. Okay, that's what I wanted to say on those two things.
Yeah, so we have a comment from Guy Rekiv.
Yeah.
I'm assuming now we have a delay in the comments, so I don't get to see the comments here on my screen for like a minute or two after they post. So if you post and I keep going, then I haven't seen it. But anyways, I'm assuming this is in reference to the Eiduth, which are the tablets of stone themselves.
Right.
And it says there are midrashim that it was written on both sides somehow. And so the question is, do you use midrashic teachings or no? In this case, we don't have to have a midrashic teaching, because it says clearly in the Torah, it says, وَيِفٍ وَيَرِدْ مَوْشَيْ مِنْ هَهَارٍ Ushene luhot ha'edut, this is the tablets of the testimony, the yado in his hand, luhot ketuvim mishene Ibrahim, mizeh umezeh haim ketuvim. And so it says that so Moses turned and he went down from the mountain, and the two tablets of the testimony, the Eiduth, were in his hands, and the tablets were written on the two sides. From this side and from that side they were written. So it tells you clearly that he had two tablets of stone that were written on both sides. But Midrash...
Yeah, but, Yaakov, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah, I hear you.
But that's not the whole story, because the Regev is referring to doesn't exactly say that. It says something more than that. The rabbis say that the exact same... charge your phone. Keep using WhatsApp. Oh, I think I have to charge my phone. No, I'm good. So the rabbis say that the writing, the exact same laws were written on both sides of the tablet. So where it says, I don't know, kabed et kabed avicha ve'et imecha. I think it says imecha ve'avicha, but that was written exactly with the same letters on both sides of the tablets, and it went through to the other side. Okay, so there were like holes.
That's nonsense.
And then the idiot rabbis, sorry, Guy Regev, I think you might be rabbing it. They say that, Yaakov, can you see me? Because I'm having trouble. You're not moving. You're frozen.
I see you fine.
Can you hear me?
I hear you fine. I see
Hello?
you fine.
Oh,
yeah.
Sugar.
I have no problem.
You hear me?
I hear you and see you. Yeah, I hear you and see you.
I don't know what's going on. Okay. So what the idiot rabbis say is that that the exact same letters were written on both sides of the luchot, and the samich, where the samich is written, the samich is written as a whole, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a miracle, because what would happen is since it's a hole and it goes straight through the tablets, there's a piece of stone that's cut out, and they would say they said in the midrash miraculously that piece of stone floated in the middle of the hole. Okay, that's the midrash. I could drag it up for you if you want to see the exact wording. Okay,
Yeah.
but there's only one problem with that, which is, of course, Yaakov. Would you like to point out the obvious glaring problem with that?
Yeah, at the time that Moses and the Israelites would have been coming out of Egypt and the commandments given to them, it wouldn't have been written in the Assyrian block Hebrew that we use today.
Exactly. It's
So
written in the
the
Paleo Hebrew.
and the Psalmic didn't look anything like the Psalmic in the Assyrian letters.
Right.
So we have a question. Do you use midrashim sometimes? And I'd like to make
never.
a point because
Anathema.
the idea of there's this exegetical mnemonic called Pardes, and it stands for Peshat, Remez, Drash, and Sod. Now, I forgot the rabbi's name, but he was in Spain in the Middle Ages, who actually attributed in the commentary of his Torah, he explained that Sod was this mystical, magical, Kabbalistic garbage that they and I want to explain too. Kabbalah was shunned by the early Jewish community. That was something that they didn't really accept. That was later on that it became this big movement amongst Jews. But the point is this idea that Peshat is only the simplistic meaning of a text is not exactly correct. The word Peshat means more than just simple. You can look at it as unpacking any part of the verse or the word itself, and that includes many things, which is grammatical, it's contextual. Sometimes you have to use analogy because there's certain words that are used only once. However, they have other synonyms used in other places. And so you have to use all those. So you have Peshat. And in fact, we use Peshat in the Tanakh, in the Torah, when it talks about taking the skin off an animal. That's the same verb used, basically unclothing. The Remez is talking about some sort of a hint. What is it hinting at? And this is when you get to like metaphors or similes. If the Torah or the Tanakh is writing in language that is metaphoric or similes where they use like or as, then it's not to be taken literally. And so you have to understand what is it driving at. All right. So, for instance, when it talks about you can't use diverse weights, you have to have the same weights. Then you could apply that just as equally, not only to weights, but in any part of your dealing with someone else, and it has to do with justice. And that, there's other things, but Sod in itself is used when you look in the Judeo-Arabic commentaries. Sod is usually translated as Ijma. Ijma is a consensus, and that's actually what Sod is getting at. It's a council, and usually when you have something that you're unclear of what it means, then the scholars get together, they debate over it. Either they agree on it or they don't, and this is where you get to a consensus of opinion. For instance, Shabbat is one of the clearest instances of consensus that we have, that it's on Saturday. There's no way to know that it was ever on Saturday. The community at large just basically agreed on it. The Tamei HaMikra, the vocalization of the Tanakh itself, that is a consensus. All the different communities of the Israelites agreed upon that, and that's what was recorded. So, in a way, we do use what is a midrash. Midrash for the rabbinites is something different than the way I would look at it. When we look at lidrosh in the Torah, it means you seek an answer. Usually that's an answer that you're seeking from God via a prophet normally. But if we look in the Torah, then that will be the same, in my opinion, the same idea that you're seeking an answer in the text itself. So if it's not clear in the context, then you look around, you search, you do a search in the Tanakh itself, and you use the Tanakh to clarify the meanings of the words, the context, and so forth. So how anybody else looks at it, that's their own opinion. That's the way I look at it.
Mm-hmm.
But all this magical Kabbalistic mumbo jumbo is absolute garbage.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 21. I think we're on 21. ونثت هكبورث على أرون من المعنى وإلها أرون تتين إتها إيدوت أشر إتين إليه. And you shall set the covering upon the Aron above, and you shall set the testimony in the Aron which I shall give you. And here's what we were talking about earlier about the Ohel Moed, verse 22. وَنُوعَدْتِ لَخَا شَمْ وَدِبَرْتِ إِتَّكَا مَعَ الْحَكِبورَ مِبَيْن شَنَي هَكِرُبِين أَشَرْ عَلْ أَرَوْنْ هَايدُوث إِذْ كُلْ أَشَرْ إِتْسَوِّي أُثَخَا إِلْبَنِ إِسْرَائِيل. And I shall meet with you there, and I will speak with you from above the covering, from between the two cherubim, upon the Aron of the Edo. This is the Aron HaEdu, the Aron of the testimony. All the things that I shall command you or enjoin upon you to the children of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
Verse 23. وعسيت شلحان عدسي شتيم أما ثايم أرقاه وأما رحبه وأما وحيتسي قمته. And you shall make a table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, and a cubit its width, and a cubit and a half shall be its height. وسبيثا أوثو زحف طهور وعسيت لو زير زحف صريف. And you shall cover it with pure gold, and you shall make for it a rim of pure gold around. So now you have to pay attention. We have first a rim around the table. Verse 25. وعسيت لو مسجرت طبح صريف وعسيت زير زحف لمسجرته صريف. And so you shall make first you have the rim of gold around the table, and then you shall make also a misgeret, which is a border, which will be a handbreadth, or the width of a hand around it. Well, let me get this question over here. Go back to here. And then you shall make a border, and then for the border itself you shall make a rim. And so that's how you have the table. So you got a table, you've got a golden rim, and then you have a border in itself having a rim. Or that's the way I visualize it anyway. 26. وعسيت الله 4 تبعوت زحاف ونثت إتحت تبعوت الأربع حبيوت أشر لأربع رغلة. And so you shall make for it 4 rings of gold, and you shall set the rings upon the 4 sides, the pe'ah. Here we have the pe'ah, which is what we talked about with the pa'am earlier, which are on its for its four legs. So this will be basically on the four corners where the four legs would be. That's where you set the rings. لعمة حمسجيرث تحيينا حتى بعوث لبحتيم لبديم لسيث et hashulhan. And it will be opposite the border. You shall, or the ring shall be, as a housing for the poles to carry the table. وعسيت أتحبديم عدسي شتيم وستفيث أوثام زحاب ونتسavам أتحشulchan. And you shall make acacia or wooden poles of wood of acacia wood, and you shall overlay them with gold, and the table shall be carried by them. وَنِسَّاvam etashulchan. Verse 29. وَعَسِيتَ كِعَرُثَاv وَكَپُثَاv وَكِسُثَاv وَمَنَكِيُثَاv أَشَرْ يُسَاخ بَهِن زَحَبْ تَحُرْ تَعَسِي أُثَام. And so you shall make ki'ara, which are dishes. Kapoth, this is a kappa is a spoon. Kaf is literally the your palm. But here is talking about spoons, and its coverings, as well as its bowls. Now, this word minakioth is talking about bowls that you use for libation offerings. Asher yusach bahim, which means by which libation offerings will be made, and you shall make them of pure gold. Verse 30. وَنَثَتَ عَلْى الْحَشُلْحَانِ لِحْمَ بَنِينَ لِفَنَاي تَمِيد. And you shall place upon the table lihm panim, which means bread of the presence, literally. And this is usually called the bread of display, or show bread. I've seen it translated. Before me, always. Lifanai tamid, before me, they should always be before me. And of course, we know later that they'll be changed every Shabbat. They'll take this bread away and put new bread there. So verse 31. We have lost Melech. I don't know where he went. So verse 31. وعسيت من ورث ذهب طهور مقشة تعسي حمنورا يريها وقنا قذيعيها وكفتريها وفرحيها من يحيو. And you shall make a golden, or a menorah of pure gold. It shall be made as a hammered work. Yerecha is talking about the shaft itself, as well as the stems, the branches of it. This is, and also its bowls and its bulbs. Bowl is gavia, bulb is kaftor, and then we have faraheha, which is the farah, which is the flowers themselves. So it shall all be made for it. Verse 32. Washisha kanim yotzeim mitzadeha shelosh kenei menorah mitzdah ha'ihad u'shelosh kenei menorah mitzdah hasheni. 6 kanim, which is literally talking about reeds, but it's the branches of itself. So we have 3 branches of the menorah shall be coming out from its sides. 3 branches of the menorah from one side and 3 branches from the other side. Verse 33. שלוש גביעים משוקדים בקנה האחד, כפתור ופרח, ושלוש גביעים משוקדים בקנה האחד, כפתור ופרח. כן לששת הקנים היוצאים מן המנורה. 3 bowls which will be almond shaped for 1 branch. So you have 1 branch with 3 bowls along with its bulbs and its flowers. So we have the shaft. From the shaft, you'll have 3 on each side coming out. And then for each shaft, you'll have 3 bowls that'll be almond shaped bowls with the bulbs and its flowers for each, 3 on each stem. And so shall you, and likewise for the 6 branches that are coming out from the menorah. So
which verse are you in now, Yaakov? I'm sorry, I was having internet problems as often happens.
I just read 33.
So so going back here, so this is another kli. This is another item that was meant to be made out of just a single beaten piece of gold, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it say it exactly? Vasita menorat zahav tahor mikshat aseha menorah yericho v'kana giv'er kaftoreha upraheha mimena iyu shisha kinim yitzim mitzideha shlosha kinim menorah mitzideha echad shlosha giv'ot. So here we go again, right? So it's vasita menorah zahav tahor miksha aseha menorah. So that implies again beaten gold.
Yeah.
And that it's meant to be made from 1 piece.
A single piece, yeah.
Right.
Verse 34. Uva menorah arba'a giv'im meshuqadim kaftoreha uferaheha. And in the menorah, 4 bowls that will be almond shaped with its bulbs and its flowers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to read the next verse.
Yeah. Go ahead.
وخفتور تحت شني حقنيم من منا وخفتور تحت شني حقنيم من منا وخفتور تحت شني حقنيم من منا لشيشة حقنيم هيوتئم من المنورة. And so it's talking about a bulb shall be under the 2 branches of it, and that basically is repeated 3 times. And as for the 3 branches on each side, and so it shall be for the 6 branches that are coming out of the menorah.
Mm-hmm. And 1 second here, if I can I think a picture. I have
a picture. I have a picture of the menorah from the Karaite synagogue in Jerusalem, which is built based on this, except for it's made of silver and not gold. There we go.
Yeah. So that's from I think that's from the Temple Institute.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got, right, let's just see here for a second. Oops. Where was it? Yeah. Achad, Kaptor, Wapera, Shosha Givi'im, Mishukadim, Bekaneha Echad. Okay, so in each prong there should be 3 almond-shaped bowls, and so that's what we see right. Oops, where'd it go? Right there, right? 1, 2, 3 almond-shaped bowls, and okay, fine. All right, next verse.
That'll be verse 36. كفترهم وكنوثام ممنا يحيو كل مقشعات ذهب tahor. This is where it tells you specifically. Their bulbs and their branches shall be of it, all of it, one single hammered work of pure gold.
Right. What's the purpose of having it a single hammered work of pure gold?
Don't know. Yeah, it
Well,
doesn't give a purpose for it.
I think there's a couple things that come to mind for me. Okay. Number one, it's more honorable that way. It's not like just pieces of gold that are glued together, with crazy glue or something like that, right?
Could be.
Right.
I know the oil is poured down inside of the stem. So you'll have a spout, which we'll read about later, where they pour the oil into the stem itself, the yorecha, and it's from this yorecha, this central stem that we saw, where the 6 branches come out, that'll have the oil. So the oil that's burning will be inside the menorah, and it could be that it has to be one single work to keep the oil inside.
Maybe, but then I don't think it's I tend to think it's not a practical purpose, because even above, we saw that because that can be done even by gluing pieces of gold together, right? But then again, we saw above that with the where was it? What was the other thing that had to be done with one piece? The covering,
the
right?
kaporet. Yeah.
The kaporet, right? Of course. So I think it has to do with a higher level of craftsmanship. You're not just taking pieces of gold and gluing them together, and like a big giant Lego piece. There might also be a theological idea behind it of one, right? A single piece rather than many pieces. Maybe that's kind of speculation, but maybe. We also see that there are other specific instructions. For instance, the altar is supposed to be made out of is not supposed to be made out of stones that have been chipped or that have been quarried, right? It's only supposed to be made out of
That's the altar itself. It says if
right.
you make an altar or an earthen altar,
right,
of stones, you're not allowed to make it. And that's one complaint I always have about the Talmudic mythology of the Steinwurm or the Shomer, I think is what it's called. No, not the Shomer. What do they call that thing?
What?
The Shomer or something like that. It's some kind of worm that they had to find.
The Shamir.
The Shamir, yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
One thing that, and they try to say, well, how did Solomon build these great blocks and so forth without being able to put a hammer on? There's no commandment anywhere in the Tanakh that says you can't use a hammer on building the temple. Only on the altar you're not allowed to do that.
That's right.
Second, it says clearly that they used hammers on them, and they did it at the quarry, which is exactly what it says. You can read this in the Tanakh itself. They quarried it and shaped it in the quarry so that no sound of the hammer would be heard on site.
Right.
This idea of this stone-eating worm is 100% complete garbage. I remember the last time we went to a Purim, I think it was, and I think it was Purim. It was Hanukkah. Went to a Hanukkah celebration at the local synagogue, and I remember I was sitting in on the pews, and the rabbi was talking to the children, talking about this shamir and how it ate the stone, and I almost laughed so loud. I remember my wife, she was ribbing me. She's like, "Don't get us throwing out," you know. But yeah, it's just such nonsense. I don't understand why rabbinical Jews have to lie about things, and that's exactly what it is. It's a fabrication. Instead of staying with what Tanakh actually says. But anyway, I lay that blame at the feet of everyone whose job it is to be reading and learning the Torah for themselves. I hear you, Miller. You still here?
Hello.
Hello, I still hear you.
Hello.
Hello, I still hear you. Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. I think what happened is I don't think the Midrashim are, I mean, obviously it's a huge body of work, but a lot of it is things that got a little bit out of control. They were never meant to be taken literally originally, or maybe they were. I don't know. You know.
I don't know.
Yeah, but basically the later Orthodox Jews who became basically, you know, enamored or entranced by their ancestor worship, which is basically the worship of the, you know, these earlier rabbis. They started taking everything that these earlier rabbis said completely literally, and they started believing, you know, these ridiculous things that are in the Midrashim. I remember my I had a friend who he's now completely secular, but he went to Asia Toilet for a while, and
Asia.
Yeah, that's what we call it. That's what we graduates call it. And they had him so brainwashed. He was actually dressing up with the uniform, the black pants and the white shirt, and all this stuff. He would be so embarrassed now if anyone were ever show him a picture of that. But at any rate, one of the things I remember he used to tell me that completely turned that basically led him from that position to being completely secular, was that one of the rabbis in Asia Toilet, Asia Torah, I should not keep on using the same joke again. Asia Torah told him the midrash about how Og, the king of the Bashan, the giant king of the Bashan, was actually from the times before Noah, and he actually survived the flood. And how did he survive the flood? He survived the flood by hanging on to the edge of the ark. And this is an actual rabbinical midrash, which, okay, I mean, you can make up stories and have fun with the Torah and all that kind of stuff. That's nice, as long as, you know, you don't take it literally. But these rabbis in Asia Toilet took it completely literally, and they were trying to teach my friend that Og of the Bashan had survived the flood by hanging on to Noah's ark, and they literally believed it. And it was so stupid in his eyes that it basically caused the complete unraveling of his brainwashing, to the point where I don't even think he can even look at a Torah anymore. So, but that's what the rabbis do. I think they push away more people than they bring in, and the proof is in the pudding. Most of the nation of Israel wants absolutely nothing to do with their rabbis and their ridiculous version of the Torah.
Yeah, they have done violence to my Torah. That's what God says to Jeremiah to tell the leaders of Israel, the priests included, as well as the prophets. You have done violence to my Torah.
Yep. I was just literally listening to that verse the other day. When I take walks, I listen to the different books of the Tanakh, and I just heard that verse just the other day. So, that's exactly true. There's only, how many brainwashed people are there left? I mean, of the 12 million Jews or 18 million Jews in the world, I keep on losing count. How many are actually, you know, Orthodox? And you can always tell an Orthodox by they wear keep on the head. That's, for me, is the distinguishing feature, right? Basically, Yaakov. Well, you do it for other reasons, but I don't know why you do it. Maybe just you know.
I do. I'll tell you. Let me explain why I do it.
Well, let me just finish the point, and then you'll.
Okay, go ahead.
Do it. But you know, so of those who are basically Orthodox, I don't know how many Orthodox Jews are there in the world. Maybe 1 million, 2 million. I don't know. 1/10 of the nation, let's say, overall. So that means 90% of the nation has rejected this brainwashing, and 10% are still holding on to this nonsense in one degree or another.
Yeah. And so, you know, just so that no one thinks that wearing a kippah is required, because it's not required. In fact, the normal Israelite as far as I know, has no required dress ever given.
Sure.
The only people who are required a certain type of clothing are the Levites
Kohanim.
and the Kohanim.
Yeah.
The Levites, they had also certain clothes that they had to wear. They couldn't just go in there however they wanted. The priests specifically were the only ones who were told that they had to wear pants, or what we would consider pants,
Mhm.
because they weren't allowed to go on the altar itself without them, to keep their private parts from being seen under the skirts that everyone wore at those days. But one of the things is that when the Cohen was, it says, standing before the presence of God in the Mishkan itself, then they had the Kohen Gadol had a certain hat covering, and so did the other Kohanim. They also had head covering, and that's when they stood in the presence of God. What was actually in the presence of God? That was the Torah itself, the 2 tablets of stone, which was the focal point of the entire Mikdash. Okay, and so when they went about their duties, they had to wear that. And the way I look at it when I read Torah is usually when I wear a head covering. It doesn't have to be a kippah; it could be any kind of head covering. But I do this personally, just out of respect, not that because I would have to do so, but I don't think of myself being any better than a Cohen. When I study Torah, I do it just basically for me, out of respect.
Okay.
Same, it's the same way that some people do take a hat off when they go into a church or whatever. Out of
Sure.
respect, they take it off. I put it on. Why a kippah? Because it's not. I don't like bibbed hats. I would actually like to wear my fedora. Honestly, I have a
Do it.
fedora that I wear, but it looks kind of funny.
You look kind of funny anyway.
Yeah, I'm a funny guy. What can I say? I forgot what verse we're on. Verse 37. وعسيث ات نيروثيها شبعا وهي ات نيروثيها وهيئر على عبر أنيها. And you shall make 7 lamps, or its 7 lamps. And you shall which means you will lift up its lamps and enlighten the place in front of it. So that's basically the point of the lamps on the menorah, is to put light before it.
I'm sorry, what verse were we? I lost the place.
Verse 37.
37. Okay, let's see.
Yeah, and this verb hi'ala means to lift up, literally. But when it was talking about the lamps, it's talking about putting fire, lighting the fire, because it talks about this later on in the book. I think it's the Chronicles. They talk about the priests. They would light the lamps every evening and put them out every morning. Which I always found to be interesting. But they use that same verb when they talk about lighting the lamp. So for those friends of mine out there who's studying biblical Hebrew with me, we're working on making biblical Hebrew a conversational Hebrew. We have a couple things here when we talk about anything in the kitchen. We can go through this later and talk about the bowls, the spoons, the dishes, and so forth. They're in here. And then we have another interesting thing here, which is called the malqaheha umahtotheha zahabtahor, and it's thongs and trays. This is I want to say this is used for the censer, where they carried the fire in from the altar. Is the same word of pure gold anyway. כיכר זהב טהור יעשה אותה את כל הכלים האלה. A talent of pure gold, he shall make them. All of these articles. Now this is interesting because it says Ya'aseh. Earlier it said Ye'aseh, which was in the Nifal, which means it shall be made. And I think earlier when it talked about menorah, it was Te'aseh in the feminine because menorah is naturally feminine. But they were in the Nifal. Here it's in the Pa'al. And so it says he shall make them, but it hasn't yet stated who shall make them. We'll learn that later. Urei wa'aseh bithavnitham asher atta mar'ei bahar. And look and make according to their pattern or their design, which you are seeing in the mountain, which you see in the mountain.
So again, that's important to point out there. כל הכלים האלה וראה ועשה בתבניתם אשר אתה מראה בהר. Right? So again, God didn't describe it in the written Torah. He's actually showing visions to Moshe on how to make these things. So that's a form of we can say Torah sanctioned oral or visual law. It's an important point. It's a very important point because this is often used by the rabbinites to say, haha, look, there's proof of an oral law right there. And there is, but it's not the same as what the rabbis mean when they talk about an oral law.
Yeah. So verse 1 of chapter 26. وإت حمشكان تعسي 10 يريعوت 6 مشزار وثخيلث وأرجمان وطلاعة شني كروفيم معسي خشيب تعسي أوثام. And the Mishkan you shall make, and with the Mishkan you shall make 10 curtains. They'll be of twined linen, of the chaleth, also of purple and crimson, dola'at shani. Keruvim, which are the cherubim, shall also be in these curtains, or cabbages. Of ma'aseh choshev means skillful or thoughtful work. You shall make them. Verse 2. Orech hayari'a ha'ahat shimone ve'esrim ba'amma ורحב 4 بأما hayari'a ha'ahat midda ahat likul hayari'ot. It's the length of one curtain is 28 cubits, and its width 4 cubits for the one curtain. One measure shall be for all the curtains. I mean, all the 10 curtains that they're making. Now, this is 10 specific here that they're making of 28 cubits long by 4 cubits wide. Okay. خمش حيرعوث تهين خبروث إيش الأخوفا وخمش يريعوث خبروث إيش الأخوفا. And so 5 of the curtains shall be joined, a woman to her sister, which means basically just end to end. And 5 curtains shall be joined basically one to another or end to end. So you'll take the 10 and you'll have on the ends, which we'll read about in a minute, we'll have loops and then hooks where they join them together in the end. In fact, we're about to read it now. Verse 4. وعسيت للعوث تخيلث على صفات حيريعة هائحات مقدس بخوارث وخين تعسي بصفات حيريعة حكت سيونا بمحبرث هشنيث. And you shall make blue loops or loops of Techelet.
It's very interesting. It's very interesting, by the way, that Robert Alter translates Techelet as indigo.
Could be. Indigo is a type of blue.
Indigo is a plant from India, hence indigo, and was one of the main sources of blue dye in the ancient world. The other three main sources were woad, which is a plant that grew in Egypt, I think near the sea or like in shallow marshes. The other one was a stone called sapphire or lapis lazuli, which if you ever see it has the most brilliant color of blue. And then the fourth one was this murex
Trunculo or something like that.
Yeah, well, they changed the name now. Now it's the murex, Hapaplex murex or something like that.
The chilizone.
They changed the scientific name for it. But what's very interesting about that is that was probably not used to make techelet in the ancient world, because it was used to make purple for the most part. And without going into a whole long thing, it was one of the main products of the Phoenicians. The word Phoenician actually means purple.
And that's argaman. And it's always used throughout the Phoenician script. Any inscription that talks about that is always argaman. Mm-hmm. Also in the Ugarit, which was a language similar to Hebrew and Phoenician that was used in that area prior to what we would consider biblical Hebrew. It also uses argaman. It doesn't use techelet.
Mm-hmm.
And techelet, interestingly, was actually used in Akkadian. It's tekel to an Akkadian, but it's not used in any other language until you get to Hebrew.
Mm-hmm. At any rate, the point is that this snail, which the rabbis say is the only way you can make techelet, was probably the least used method for making techelet in the ancient world, because it was used to make purple, and the process
the Tyrian purple,
has to be modified in order to with great effort in order to make it into techelet. But the rabbis basically, because Tyrian purple was such an expensive item and famous basically throughout the Mediterranean world and beyond, so much so that in certain places only it was restricted. Its use was restricted to royalty and nobility and stuff like that. So they probably took this idea and used it for their definition of techelet, and then came up with this lie basically that the Torah was referring to when the Torah refers to techelet, it's referring to only this animal. Now, how the hell are they going to get? They're in the desert, okay? They're nowhere near the sea, okay? And unless they carried techelet from Egypt, which is high level speculation, where the hell are they going to get to? I guess you could say the same thing about indigo, but maybe they used other sources such as woad. But at any rate, it's just, this is an example of false oral law, where the rabbis say that techelet must be made according to the Torah, passed down through some secret oral law, which doesn't exist. That techelet must be made from this Hapaplex murex, or whatever it's called, or form the murex trunculus. When in fact the Tyrian purple was not even famous did not even become very popular until much later in the history of the Phoenicians.
Yeah, and that happened. I want to remind everyone, when you read the textbooks and they talk about Phoenician, the Phoenician language, the Phoenician writing, the Phoenician alphabet. That was first, or the earliest date you can find anything Phoenician is around 1050 BCE. All right, that's over 300 years after the Israelites entered into what we call the land of Canaan.
Yep.
And in all practicality, there are certain things in Phoenician that makes it a little bit different from Hebrew, just like Moabites, a little bit different from what we would call Hebrew, but really they're basically the same language. They're just
Right.
a little bit different dialects of that same language.
Right.
But so the Phoenician Empire rose in the north of Canaan a little over 300 years after the Israelites conquered Canaan.
And their development of the Tyrian purple did not become popular until many centuries later. I can't remember exactly when. I know Carthage, which I had the pleasure of visiting in 2018, which is now right near Tunis in Tunisia, was founded in 800 BCE and then reached its height maybe a couple of centuries later, and that's when the Tyrian purple had reached its
just prior to the
famous.
Greek age.
Yeah. Right. So obviously the rabbis, when they made up this lie that Tchelet has to be based on this snail, which is exactly the same snail that the Phoenicians were using to make their Tyrian purple. So the rabbis basically copied them, modified the process slightly, and now we're making their Tchelet out of it, and then came up with this lie that Tchelet had to be made from this particular animal, which the Phoenicians were using to make their famous Tyrian purple, and which the Phoenicians are named after. Phoenician actually means the purple people. So the Phoenicians are the purple people. That's literally what it means.
One thing I like to point out to people when they talk about these colors, only Tchelet seems to be a problem. Why not Argaman? Why not Fala'at Shani? Why not Ma'adamim or any of those other colors? No one argues about how they're made. Any form that they're made to make those colors is quite all right. Only with this one, which actually has to do with keeping a mitzvot for the tzitzit and also for the articles of the clothing of the Kohanim and the construction of the Mishkan. Do they make a big problem? And I've always been of the opinion that if it really mattered how the color was made, okay, or a specifics of a color, then the Torah is normally specific and clear. It tells you exactly how some, and it gives you the exact measurements and so forth. When it's not
you get it?
clear,
that's when Moshe was shown. That's what it's referring to in the end of chapter 25 when it says Moshe is going to be shown this stuff up on the mountain. That's it's oral law.
Yeah, that's nonsense. Anyway,
but Yaakov, you're making actually an excellent point that no one makes a big deal out of what animal Argaman is made out of or what animal Tolat Shani is made out of, although they claim it's a worm, which is, I like your proof having to do with the fact that the worm is an unkosher animal. But at any rate, no one makes a big deal. They only make a big deal out of this Tchelet, right? And the reason they make a big deal out of this Tchelet with this one animal is because it was very expensive. Again, this is why it was restricted often throughout the history in a number of different countries. I think in the Roman Empire it was restricted to use only by royalty, and a number of other empires. I don't remember now. It's been a couple of years since I was in Tunis and studied all this stuff. But basically, the rabbis are making a lot of money off of this bullshit because no, I'm serious, because it's a very
it's
expensive.
the same thing with kosher
you
food.
Force all your constituents to buy expensive tchelet rather than indigo, which is dirt cheap, or woad, which is dirt cheap. Then you're going to make a heck of a lot. You're going to make a heck of a lot of money. It would be like me saying you have to I don't know, you have to buy I don't know. A classic example would be in the universities today, where some idiot professor writes a textbook and then forces all his students to buy only that textbook, and it costs $300 for the textbook, and then he modifies it each year, and then you have to buy the updated version, so you can't buy the used version from your from the previous students who had your class. It's the same kind of scam going on here. I think there was definitely a monetary interest. I think so, personally.
I do too. That's all it's been about, is business, money, and power.
Yep.
You know, and you see that really when talk about. I won't even go in there. Let's get back to the Torah.
As a friend of mine likes to say, there's no business like show business.
That's true.
Yeah.
So verse 5.
All right.
50 لولو تعسي بيريعة هات و50 لولو تعسي بقصي حيريعة أشر بمحبرة حشنيس مقبلات. Oh, here we go. We got the Kabbalah. مقبلات حلولات إيش الأخفى. And so 50 loops you shall make for one curtain, or in the one curtain, and 50 loops you shall make at the end of the curtain, which shall be the adjoining end of the second. Okay. Machbiloth halulaoth, which will be accepting the loops one to another. Isha il Chotha. And here we go with the clasps. Well, Asitha Hamishim Karas Zahav. Keres is basically a hook or a clasp. All right, here we go. We got a good question here from Yoshi Ben.
There you go.
Watching on.
Hit it, Yaakov.
Yeah, you know, so
what? Where is that? Oh, that's on YouTube. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he's watching on YouTube on our YouTube channel.
Nice.
So when we talk about the chelet, okay, we also have what we call crimson. Crimson is literally thola'at shani, which means crimson worms. Okay, the word thola means a worm. And the first time we see this word used is in the story in Exodus chapter 16, where we have manna. Some people kept the manna when they shouldn't have kept the manna, and it had worms, and it uses the same word thola. And so thola literally means a worm. Okay, so I've heard many times people make the statement, "Why? How are we going to use something unclean to make blue?" But we have also worms, which are equally as unclean, that you make crimson from. In fact, the word crimson comes from I can't remember exactly. I think it's Persian, maybe.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
But it comes from, I think it's called the carmelian, and that's also the larvae of an insect. So in those days, yeah, tola'ah means a worm, and when you say tola'at shani, it means worms of crimson. Okay, it's tola'ah. There's an ayin with a hey there. Tola'ah, not tola'ah. It's not tola'ah. Anyway,
it comes from the Arabic kirmizi.
Yeah.
1 second.
I think it's ultimately from the Persian.
Shield louse that yields a red dye.
Mm-hmm.
The Sanskrit compound is kirmi, worm.
Yeah, it's a worm.
So it comes ultimately, I don't know about ultimately, but because there's a long thing here, but it's related to Sanskrit kirmi, crimson, carmelian, like you said, which means a worm.
Yeah. And you know, so in those days, insects, the larvae, and so forth, they were used all over to make certain colors. Is this exactly what it's talking about?
They are to this day. They are to this day.
Yeah. If you have food coloring in your food or drink, it's usually made from that.
Let's see. There's a red dye made from bugs. If you ever see the following list,
the cochleo, I think is what it is.
Yeah, cochinio. Let's see.
Yeah,
I'll get the history, art, biology, farming, farm and dye, uses, labeling, if you ever see an artificial non-allergic cousin that's labeled E124, if you ever see E124 where they use the E system, the European system, then you're eating bug blood or something like that. Oh, E120. In the EU, authorities list carmine as additive E120.
Mm.
There
So
it is.
almost any kind of food coloring that you're going to see commonly used, whether it's red or even yellow or any of the other various colors, they're going to be from insects.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, the point is, it may not be that this means crimson worm. I think it does mean crimson worm. In fact, anytime that word is used outside of color, it's always referring to a worm. It's not referring
And
to
let's
anything
put the
else.
evidence together. We know that since ancient times, worms were used to make a red
Yeah.
dye, right? Here we're speaking about tola'at sheni. The word tola'ah means worm. It's what it
Worm.
means, right? And
Yeah.
shani means crimson, and worms have been used since ancient times to make a crimson dye. So I think your point is very strong. So in answer to Yoshi Ben, so therefore we see. So forget about tchelet for a second. We see here clear proof that tola'at sheni, that worm guts or worm whatever, however they extracted the color from worms, were being used to make the temple. So already that's a much stronger proof that non-kosher animals were being used to make colors, and therefore it's a simple step from that to understand that tchelet could have been made from an unkosher animal, or that argaman could have been made from an unkosher animal. Although once again, the main source of tchelet in the ancient world was not this murex trunculus or this Hapoplex trunculus. It was either indigo, woad, usually indigo and woad for linen dyes.
Yeah. Okay, verse 6. So let me just look real quick to see if we have any other questions. Shaya is there. Shaya. Shabbat Shalom, Shaya.
Where are you looking?
Okay.
You're looking on YouTube?
No, I have a separate window that has the chats from both YouTube and Facebook, but there's a delay. So when someone writes, it takes a minute or two before it actually shows up here.
Well, you
And
got
so
to
I
give me
don't.
the login credentials to that, so I can see that as well.
Okay.
But
And
not now.
yeah, no problem. So verse 6, I think. وعصيت 50 قرص ذهب وحبرت إتها يريعوث إيشا الأخوثة بكرسيم وحيح مشكان إحاف. And so you shall make 50 clasps of gold, and you shall couple the curtains one to another by the clasps, and the Mishkan shall be one. Verse 2. وعسيت يريعوث عزيم لأوحل على المشكان عشتي إسري يريعوث تعسي أثام. And you shall make curtains of goat's hair, or goat hair curtains, for the tent upon the Mishkan. Now, this is going to be 11 curtains. All right, the first curtains we had were 10, and they were coupled end to end. And this is going to be 11. أورخ يريعة هأحث شلوشين بأما وروحب أربع بأما هيريعة هأحث مد أحد لأشتي عسري يريعوث. And so the length of one curtain shall be 30 cubits. So the first one was 28 cubits long, 4 cubits wide. These 11 will be 30 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. One measure shall be for the 11 curtains.
All right, let's just skip all these boring parts. Let's get to some blood and guts. A little Torah humor.
Do you really want to skip over?
No.
Okay, I'm trying to look where.
In all
That's
honesty,
gonna be.
It's the best way to understand these verses would be to look at a picture, or even there are online tours. I think in YouTube they'll have actually a video of what it looked like. I also have on Karaite Insight on my I think it's on the Karaite Insights YouTube channel. When I went to the replica of the Mishkan in Timna Park. So if you want to look for it on there, you can actually see what it looks like, because it's very hard to visualize all this stuff without pictures. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have a Hebrew picture book coming. It's going to be basically it's a biblical Hebrew lexicon, but all the words will be accompanied with pictures. So it'll be a visual dictionary. I thought that'd be pretty cool.
What do you mean? You're making it or you're buying it?
No. It's on the way. It's already been purchased, so it should be coming
Okay.
within a week or two. And I
Wait,
figured
what is it again? Exactly.
it's a visual lexicon. It's a biblical Hebrew lexicon with all the words with pictures. They'll be with pictures so that you'll see exactly what it is
That's
that's
cool.
being. Yeah, I saw that on Amazon.
If you can text me the name, the link.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
I definitely.
I thought it was pretty cool, and
That is cool.
because I'm talking with lots of people about
Right.
it, and what we're trying to do is, biblical Hebrew is something I love. It's something I'm into every day, and I'm trying to find a group of people who want to try to communicate in biblical Hebrew. It's not going to be practical if anyone goes to Israel. But
you should go to the. There are. Well, what might be useful is, so the Israeli government. There's an official institute. It's called the Machon Lashon I think it's called Machon Lashon Ivri, or something like that, or Lashon Ivri, the Hebrew Language Institute. And so they come up with official words for lots of things. Now they don't use just biblical Hebrew; they use Hebrew, Aramaic.
Well, you have several thousand words in the Tanakh. Okay, so to be considered fluent in any language, you only need, I think, 2,000 words. Now, there's enough words in the Tanakh that we could actually use to make, modern words if we have to have one. For instance, like in German, when the vacuum just means to be empty. That's what the vacuum means. Empty is Latin. So we call a vacuum cleaner in English. It's called a Staubsauger in German. And so what the Staubsauger. Staubsauger. Yeah.
The Staubsauger.
Yeah. So what the Germans did was they took something that they didn't actually have in their language, and they used pure German, and they basically described the function of the machine. Staubsauger literally means dust sucker. So we have the word for dust and we have the word for sucker. We can do the same sort of thing. It doesn't necessarily have to be a foreign word. We can actually use Hebrew words and make modern things. Sometimes it'll be difficult,
Well, essentially, that's what they did when they tried to recreate modern Hebrew, and there are examples that exist in modern Hebrew where that's the case. Like computer is machshev.
Machshev, yeah, it's a reckoner,
thinker, right? It's a thinking machine. There's so many examples, right? And there are many examples. The classic example of where it failed is they tried to name the telephone. If you speak to any Israeli, he knows the story. It's kind of like Hebrew lore, that the official name for the telephone was the Sach Rachok. So Sach, like l'socheach, or Sach, to talk, right? And Rachok means far away. So Sach Rachok, telephone, right? And so nobody in Israel calls the telephone the Sach Rachok. They call it the telephone, right? But there was an attempt at least to do exactly what you're saying. The only problem with that is they didn't just use biblical Hebrew. They also used later Hebrew, Mishnaic Hebrew, Talmudic Hebrew, Aramaic. Sometimes I think they even use medieval Hebrew, which is sometimes based on Spanish and French, due to the prevalence of Jews in the Iberian Peninsula and in France during the Middle Ages. So it's not pure, but the idea is there.
Well, when you think of like pure, I try to stay pretty close to biblical Hebrew. Now, is biblical Hebrew a pure Hebrew language? No, not in any way, shape, or form. You have various loan words even in biblical Hebrew. So it's not forbidden to use a foreign loan word for something, even in biblical Hebrew, what we call biblical
Well,
Hebrew.
in all fairness, there are very few biblical loan. I mean, there are very few loan words from other languages in biblical Hebrew, and when they are, it's very clear that they're
They're
specific
loan words,
things.
yeah. And
Like
they're for specific things, yeah. And they're for specific things that are from a foreign culture that you don't actually have in
right. So those aren't really loan words per se. I mean, those are cultural references, or
however you want to call it. But the point is, there's foreign words there, even in the biblical Hebrew, to talk about those things.
there are foreign words. Just to clarify, there are foreign words in the Tanakh or in the Torah, but I don't think they are part of biblical Hebrew. They're just referring to specific things from other. They're not reused except outside of the context of when they're talking about those specific things.
Okay. So, but the point is that I'm trying to get a group of guys that want to study this stuff and actually get to the point where we're communicating specifically in biblical Hebrew. And so you can use these words here. I forgot what the point was I was making to begin with.
Yeah.
But anyway, so
yeah.
verse 12. والسيرح هعوديف بريعوت هأهل حيتسي هيريعا هعوديفت تسرح al آخوري همشكان. And the remnant, serach is the remnant, or the remains, the leftover.
It appears only one place in the entire Tanakh, and that's in this verse, Exodus 26:12.
And the audef, which means the leftover, what remains of the curtains of the tent, half of the curtain that of the remaining curtain, you shall make it basically hang over the back of the Mishkan. وهأما مزي بعوديف بعورخ يريعوت هأوهل يهي صاروح على سدي همشكان مزي ومزي لخصوته. And so and the one or the cubit on this side and the cubit on this side that remains, the length of the curtain of the tent shall be draped over the side of the Mishkan from one side to the other to cover it. وعسيت مغسل أهل عروض قليم مقدمين ومغسل عروض تخشين ملمعلة. And you shall make a covering for the tent of ram skins, which are going to be ma'adamim, which I say are earthen colored, or whatever you want to say, red or whatever. And a covering of worked leather. Some people say this is dolphin skin. I don't think that's what it is, but right. From above.
Yeah.
Verse 15.
Curious to see how, again, Mr. What's his face? Alter translates that. 1 second. That's verse 14, yeah? Red. Over both sides of the tabernacle, cover it, and you shall make a covering for the tent of reddened ram skins, and a covering of ochre-dyed skins above. That's the way he translates it. So he doesn't say anything about dolphins.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've seen people talk about dolphin or porpoise or whatever.
Yeah, I've
but
heard that.
And that's because Arabic. You have techesh in Arabic, means a dolphin, but you also have teches, which means worked leather. So you know.
Right.
So 26:15 starts the fourth aliyah. وعصيت את הקרשים למשכן עד שתים עומדים. And you shall make the boards or planks of the Mishkan for the Mishkan of upright or standing acacia wood. עצר עמות אורך הקרש وأما وحدسي هأما رحب هكرش هائها. And so it'll be the length of the board or the plank, however you want to say it, shall be 10 cubits, and the width of the one board shall be a cubit and a half. 17 شتيذوث لقيرش هائحاد مشلبوث إيش الأخوثا كين تعسي لخل قرسي حمشكان. And so you shall, so 2 yadot, which is talking about literally a hand, but it's talking about a clasp of some sort, something that holds that's going to actually hold the boards together. You shall make 2 of these to each board to connect one to the other, and so shall you make each of the boards of the Mishkan. Verse 18, وعسيت أتحك كرشيم لمشكان إسرين كيرش لفأت نقبة ثمانة, and you shall make the boards for the Mishkan, 20 boards to the southern side, southward, and this is the Pia. أربعين أذن خسف تعسي تحت عسرين حكارش شني أدنيم تحت حكارش هيهاد لشتي يدوثا وشني أدنيم تحت حكارش هيهاد لشتي يدوثا. And so you shall make 40 pedestals, basically is what this is. I think some people translate these as sockets. It's whatever you set these boards, you're going to set these boards in so that they stay upright. Under the 20, so you make 40 pedestals of silver under the 20 boards, 2 pedestals under one board with the 2 connectors, and so it'll be 2 pedestals under one board with two connectors. ולסלע המשכן השנית לפאת צפון 20 قارش. And so for the second side of the Mishkan, the northern side, 20 boards. Verse 21, أربعين أذنيهم كاسف شني أذنيم تحت حكيرش هائهاد وشني أذنيم تحت حكيرش هائهاد. And there 40 pedestals of silver, 2 pedestals under the one board and 2 pedestals under the one board. So each board is basically going to have 2 pedestals. Uli yarkethei hamishkan yamma ta'asei shisha kirashim. And for the westward yamma, which means the seaside, which is western, and for the western side of the Mishkan, you shall make 6 boards. Ushine kirashim ta'aseh lim kus auf hamishkan biyar b'yarkathayim. And 2 boards you shall make for the corners of the Mishkan in the 2 sides. وَيِهُ ثَأَمِيم ملمتا ويحدع يحيو ثميم على رشو إلحد تبعه هائحاث كين يهي لشنيهم لشني همقصعوث يحيو. And they shall be to'amim, which basically means they'll be joined together from below or beneath, and they shall be coupled together. And they shall be coupled together at al-rosho, which means above its head, towards the rings, the 1 ring, and so shall the 2. And thus shall it be for them both. They shall be for the 2 corners. And these are the 2 posts only for the corners. وحيو شمونا كرشيم وأذنيهم كاسف 16 أذنيم شني أذنيم تحت حكيرش هيهات وشني أذنيم تحت حكيرش هيهات. And so they shall be 18, or no, excuse me, they shall be 8 boards along with their pedestals of silver, 16 pedestals, 2 pedestals under 1 board, and that's repeated again, and 2 pedestals under 1 board. Verse 26. وعسيت بريحيم عدسي شتيم خميشة لكرش السلة مشكان هيها. And you shall make bars of acacia wood, 5 for the boards of the one side of the Mishkan. 27. وحميشة بريحيم لكرش السلة مشكان هشنيث وحميشة بريحيم لقرش السلة مشكان ليرخثايم يما. And 5 bars for the boards of the second side of the Mishkan, and 5 bars for the boards of the side of the Mishkan, for the 2 sides westward. Verse 28. وحب رياح حتيخون بثوق حق كراشيم مفريح من حقتسي إلى حقتسي. And the bar وحب رياح حتيخون بثوق حق كراشيم, and the bar which reaches into the midst of the board, from مفريح من حقتسي إلى حقتسي. So it'll be and the middle bar in the midst of the boards, it'll basically reach from end to end. وإت حق كراشيم تصفي الزحاف وتبعثيها وإت تبعثهم تعسي الزحاف باتيم لب بريحيم وسفيثة اتحب بريحيم زحاف. And the boards or the planks you shall overlay with gold, and their rings you shall make of gold, to house the bars, and you shall also overlay the bars with gold. Verse 30. وحكموثا את המשכן כמשפטו אשר הראית בהר. And you shall erect the Mishkan according to its fashion. The mishpat is basically the judgment, according to its judgment. Here it's talking about the manner that it should be erected, that you have seen in the mountain. So verse 26:31 begins the fifth aliyah. وعسيث فروخت تخيلت ورقمان وطلعت شني والشيش مشزار معسي خشيب يعسي أوثا كروبيم. And you shall make a this is called the parochet, which is basically this is going to end up being the veil. It's going to be of blue and purple and scarlet. It'll be twisted linen or twined linen, if you want to say twined. It'll be of a skillful work. He shall make it with cherubim. Again, we have the Yaseh, which means he shall make it. Of course, it hasn't yet been made clear who's going to make it, but we'll learn about that later. ونثت أثاء الأربعة عمودي شتين متسبيم زحاب وويهم زحاب الأربعة أدنى خاسف. And you shall set it upon 4 pillars of acacia wood, which will be overlaid with gold. And the wawehim, this is where you get the word wow, which basically means a hook. And there are hooks of gold upon the 4 silver pedestals. ونفت حب parochet تحت حب كرسيم وهذيث شامة من بيت لباروخeth את ארון העדות והבדילה הפרוכת לכם בין הקודש ובין קודש הקודשים. And you shall set the parochet, which is the veil, under the clasp, and you shall bring it there inside, and you shall bring there inside the parochet the aron of the testimony. So this is the Ark of the Covenant. Shall be brought. Oh, excuse me. I hope that wasn't too loud. And you shall bring the aron of the testimony inside the parochet, which so it'll be behind it. And the parochet shall separate for you between the kodesh and between the kodesh hakodashim. So the kodesh hakodashim is the place where the aron sits, and the kodesh is outside of the parochet, which is where the altar of incense will be, where the shulchan is going to be, and where the menorah is going to be at. ונתת את הכפורת על ארון העדות בקודש הקודשים. And you shall set the covering upon the aron of the testimony in the Kodesh Kodashim, in the most holy place. وسمت את השולחן מחוץ לפרוכת ואת המנורה נוכח השולחן על סלע המשכן תימנה והשולחן תיתן על סלע צפון. And so you shall set the table outside of the veil, and the menorah in front of the shulchan on the south side of the Mishkan, and the table you shall place upon the north side. So if you picture the the Mishkan, the opening is going to be towards the east, okay? And so it says that the shulchan is going to be on the northern side, and then so the menorah will be on the southern side. وعصيت مساق لفتح أهل تخيلت وأركمان وطلعت شني والشيش مصدار مع روقين. And you shall make basically a screen or a covering for the opening of the tent. Techelet, which is the blue, the purple, as well as the scarlet, of twined or twisted linen. It shall be the work of rokaim, which means the weaver, a weaver's work, or if you want to say embroidered. وعسيت لمساخ خميشة عمودي شتين وسبيت أثام زحاف وبهم زحاف ويسقت لهم خميشة أدنى نخوشة. And you shall make for the screen or for the covering 5 pillars of acacia wood, and you shall overlay it with gold and its hooks of gold, and you shall pour for them 5 pedestals of bronze or copper. I think it's bronze. So now we're on the 6th aliyah. This is going to be chapter 27, verse 1. وعسيت إت حمزبيح عدسي شتين 5 أمود أورخ و5 أمود رحاب ربوع يهيي همزبيح وشالوش أمود قمثو. And you shall make the altar of acacia wood. 5 cubits shall be its length, and 5 cubits its breadth. So it's 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide. And the altar shall be made square, and it'll be 3 cubits high. So it's 5 cubits long, so it's going to be square. And it'll be 3 cubits high. وعسيت قرنثاو على 4 بنوثاو من منو تهين قرنثاو وسبيث أوثو نخوشة. And you shall make its horns upon the 4 sides or the 4 corners. And you shall make the horns of it. So the altar itself and the horns shall be made of one piece. And you shall overlay it with bronze. وعسيت سيروتاv لدشنو ويعاو ومزرقوثاو ومزلقوثاو ومحتوثاو لكل قلاو تعسي نخوشت. And so you shall make sirothau. Now the word sir is used for pots today, but here it's talking about you shall make its pans, so that you can for its ashes. And it says waya'au, and also these little shovels and mizrakothal, which are its basins. legothal. Mizlech is a fork, a flesh fork, and it's forks. And also it's fire pans. This is what we read about earlier. This is the mahtafo. Mahta is a basically a tray that you put the fire in. And for all of its vessels or its utensils, you shall make of bronze. وعسيت له مخبر معسي ريشة نخوشة وعسيت الحريشة أربع تبعوث نخوشة على أربع خصوصا. And you shall make for it a grating. Mikhbar is basically a grating. It's going to go over the top, which will be Reshid Nechoshet, which will be a netting or a network of bronze. So the grate will basically be a bronze network. And you shall make on the network 4 rings of bronze on its four sides. Verse 5, ونثت أثا تحت كركوب حمزبيخ لماتا وحيثا حرشت عد حتسي حمزبيخ. And you shall set it under the ledge of the altar, the Karkov, below, and the net shall be up until half of the altar.
Yaakov, where are we? I'm sorry, I was having
we're on verse. I just read verse 5.
28:5, 27:5,
27:5. Yeah.
Okay.
So now we're on 6. وعسيت vadim למזבח بدي عدسي شتيم وسبيت أوثام نخوشت. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and you shall overlay them with bronze.
Right.
And
notice
also,
not gold. The mizbeach. Wait, the badim for the mizbeach were overlaid with gold. Not for the mizbeach. For the aron were overlaid with gold, I believe, right?
And for the shulchan were also overlaid with gold.
And these are overlaid with
bronze. Is probably because bronze has a higher melting point than gold.
Well, the altar's not on fire when they're carrying it, but I
not
think
when they're carrying it, but when they're burning it.
Well, I think it's just because the other things are in the Holy of Holies, right? And these are not, or at least in the Holy, and these are not. These are in more the outer. So the farther away you get from the center, then the less majestic it is. So this is in the outer courtyard, where
so the Holy of Holies is the head of gold. The holy part in the courtyard is the body of bronze, or the legs of bronze. Nah, just making a joke.
Right.
Yeah. Anyway, verse 7. وخوفا اتبدعوا بتبعوث وحيو حبديم على شتي سلعوث حمزبيخ بسعيد أوثو. And the poles shall be brought into the rings, and the poles shall be upon the 2 sides of the altar, as it's being carried, or to carry it. Be saith Otho, as it's being carried is how I would read it. While it's being carried. The other ones, the Aron and the Shulchan, the boards would always remain with it. Here for the altar, it's only when they're carrying it.
Right.
Nevuv luchoth ta'ase Otho kasher hir'a Othecha bahar ken yasu. Nevuv means hollow. Luchot is tablets or boards. And that's the same word that they use for the Luchat Evanim, or the tablets of law. And so it says, hollow boards you shall make it, as you saw in the mountain, so shall they make.
Again, reference to as you saw in the mountain.
Yep.
In the true oral law.
Yep. So the sixth aliyah begins in 27:9. These will go really fast because these are short aliyahs. So وعسيت ات حصر حمشكان لفأت نيغف تيمان كلاعيم لحدسير شيش مصزار مية بأما أورخ لبيئة حائحات. And so you shall make the courtyard of the Mishkan, or the court of the Mishkan, towards the southern side, and kila'im lechatzer, which is basically curtains or hangings. Actually, it's hangings for the courtyard of twisted or twined linen. Now, this word kila is interesting because we have this thing called metathesis, where from different languages the letters can sometimes be rearranged, but they're actually the same word. They're what's called cognate. And so in Arabic we have this word alaq. It's written, if you take this word to kila and change it, turn it around, and it's ayin lamed qaf, then that would be the Arabic for the same thing, something that hangs. Hangings for the courtyard of twisted or twined linen. It'll be 100 cubits long for one side.
Right. So these are basically the curtains for the outside courtyard.
Yeah, the very outside.
In the courtyard.
وعموداو عسريم وأذنيهم عسريم نخوشت وويها عموديم وحشقيهم خاسر. And it's 20 pillars, 20 pillars, and it's 20 pedestals of bronze, and the hooks of the pillars and their joints. Hashuk, I think, is a joint, and their joints of silver.
So I guess basically what it's saying here is, okay, so we've got these 20 poles. So if the 20 poles and it's a circle, that means you're going to have 20 cloth hangings, right?
Yep. Shalom Cohen Lincoln. I think that's what it says.
Cohen Lincoln?
Yeah, somebody just joined the program on Facebook. So shalom, and thank you for joining.
I know who that is.
Sure. I don't know.
I know who it is.
Okay. So verse 12. وَرُحَابْ حَتْسَيْرْ لِفْأَتْ يَمْ كِلَعِيم خَمِشِيم أَمَّا عَمُدَيْهِمْ عَسَّرَةٌ وَأَذْنَيْهِمْ عَسَّرَةٌ. And for the width of the courtyard to the western side, 50 curtains, amma, which means, or curtains, 50 cubit curtains. My goodness. And there are 10 pillars, and there are 10 pedestals. وروحاب حتسير لفأت قيدما مزراحة, and that's how you know which way Kedma is. Hamishim Amma, and the width of the courtyard to the eastern side, the direction of the rising sun, is Raha, 50 cubits. وخميش إسري عما كلاعيم لقاطيف عموديهم شلوشا وأذنيهم شلوشا. And the hangings, so وخميش إسري عما, and 15 cubits, the hangings of the katif, literally means a shoulder, but I think it's talking about the gate. The gate at the front. There are 3 pillars and there are 3 pedestals. ולכתף השנית 15 קלעים, עמודיהם 3 ואדניהם 3, and for the other side, or for the second katef, I think this will, like I said, this is the other side of the gate. 15 hangings, and there are 3 pillars and 3 pedestals. ولشعار حتسير مساح إتسريم عما تخلف الأرجمان وطلعت شني والشيش مشزار مع سير وقيم عموديهم 4 وأدنيهم 4. And for the gate of the court, a screen or a covering, 20 cubits of blue, purple, and scarlet, of twisted or twined linen. It shall be the work of a rokem, which is a weaver. There are 4 pillars and there are 4 pedestals. كل عمودي حتسير سبيف محشقين كاسف وويهم كاسف وأدنيهم نخوشت. And all of the pillars of the court around محشقين, so be bound with silver, and the hooks of silver, and their pedestals of bronze. أورخ حتسير 100 بأما ورخاب 50 ب50 وقوما 5 أمرات 6 مصدار وأذنيهم نخوشة. And the length of the court is going to be 100 cubits, and the breadth 50 50 ب50, 50 by 50. And its height shall be 5 cubits. This will be twined linen, and their pedestal, or the pedestals of bronze. بكل خليها مشكان بكل عبودته وكل يثيدوثاف وكل يثدوت حخاتسير نخوشت. And the utensils or the items of the Mishkan, for all of its services, or all of its service, and all of its pins. Yithaid is a pin, and the pins of the court shall be of bronze. So that was the end of Parashath Terumah.
Oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, so next week it'll probably be just as boring for most, because it's going to be pretty redundant. We'll be reading about the actual making of these things, the gathering of the items, and so forth. All right, so I'll be right back. I need just a second.
I guess that leaves me. Let's see. What can I say? Well, let's throw a question out to the audience. Are we in the end of days, given all the crazy stuff that's going on now with this fake COVID pandemic and the lockdowns and all of the other crazy stuff? Anyone want to render an opinion? I think I could see it. Guy Regev says, where do you guys study, learn? Where did you guys study, learn? I personally studied in a number of yeshivas in Israel when I was Orthodox, although I was never completely indoctrinated into the cult. I always had my reservations from day one. But then I kind of found charism on my own. I started reading the Tanakh a lot in the late 1990s when I was in Israel, and I realized that was what I'd always been looking for, rather than the rabbinical message, which never made any sense to me, honestly, from day one. And that was it. That's how I became a Karaite, and that's where I studied. Yaakov, he'll have to speak for himself, but I don't think he had any formal study in yeshiva. I think he learned most of the, autodidact, learned most of the stuff on his own. But you'll have to ask him. Any other questions? Or any other things you guys want to discuss? Well, I guess we'll wait for Yaakov to come back, even though it's almost 5, or it's almost 6 o'clock his time. Let's see. We can go through some Tanakh. Let's randomly pick a book of the Tanakh.
Okay.
Oh, you're back. Yeah.
So we have a question. I don't really understand this one. Where's you guys study, learn?
Where did you?
Oh, okay. I learned from Yeshivat Moshe.
No, you were in the yeshiva of Shem and Ever for 14 years.
Yeah.
Yeshiva of Shem and Ever.
Nah. I learned from the Torah. I didn't learn from really anywhere else that I know of.
Are there any Karaite leaders in the U.S.? None. 0.
Come on, there's Nehemiah.
The official Karaite organization that calls themselves the Karaites are not very much of leaders, but they are based in Daly City, California. They're about as useless as a pot of warm piss, and that's being kind to them.
Yeah.
But we're not part of that organization. We, many years ago, anyone associated with the World Alliance of Qara'im rejected them for various reasons. If you go to our website, then you can see a manifesto of exactly why we rejected them. Basically, they rejected true Karaism a long time ago. They have the nerve to call us the fake Karaites, but if you ever listen to what they have to say, you'll see they're the fake Karaites. They basically act halfway between Karaites and halfway between Rabbinites. They're afraid to really stand up for Karaism. They're always worried about what other people may think or say of them. In Israel, they're worried about fitting in with the Rabbinites. Basically, they gave up the fight a long time ago. So they call themselves the real Karaites, but they're really the fake Karaites. It's ironic that we live in such an upside down world that fake news is the real news is the fake news, all this kind of stuff. So we who are considered by them to be the rebels are, in my opinion, keeping the true flame of Karaism alive, whereas they, who consider themselves to be the true Karaites, have abandoned the fight a long time ago, and their entire community is falling apart. Another generation or two, there won't be any of those Karaites left at all.
One of the biggest gripes that I've had with that group over the years is, when we talked about at the beginning of this study about oral law. My position has always been that there was definitely an oral law, and we only have to look at the Torah to have proof of that. Now, the oral law that the rabbis say the oral law is not the same oral law that I'm talking about. We have the tablets of the Torah that were given at Sinai, okay? And Melech made mention of this issue of the daughters of Zelophehad when it had to do with inheritance. That was 40 years after they left Sinai.
That's right.
Okay, that happened. That was at the time when Eliezer was the Kohen Gadol. It was already after the death of Aaron and Miriam, and they were actually just about to go into the land, and this was just before the death of Moses. Also, throughout the years that they were in the wilderness, we see many instances after the tablets of law that was given to Moses that it says he went and the people came to him with questions, and he went to seek God in the tent of meeting, and he brought something back to the people. So we know that there was questions being asked. It was going back and forth between Moses and the people. So we know that there were other laws that were not written on the tablets of stone. Now, we have two different things. They're pretty much the same. We have the tablets of stone, and then we have the Sefer HaBarith, which was written by Moses, which is what the Sefer HaTorah is, and this is what's sometimes referred to as the Torah of Moshe, or the Torah of Moses. He wrote that, which included, according to what we see in the Torah itself, the wars of Joshua, the journeying of the Israelites, as well as the blessings and curses, and several other things. The Song of Moses, all of that was said to be written by Moses. So just before they were the death of Moses, it says he finished writing this all in the Sefer HaTorah until the end, including the blessings and the curses and everything. And then he handed it over to the Kohanim and to the elders. And the reason why I want to point that out is because in order for him to hand this Torah over to the Kohanim as well as to the elders, is if there was more than one copy of this that was made. There were 40 years in this wilderness going around and around. All right, in 40 years, they had enough time for all the leaders of the various tribes to receive the same copy. And of course, the king, according to the Torah, when the king was eventually to be chosen or appointed, it says he was supposed to also write for himself a copy of the Torah that was with the Kohanim. So there were other copies, but the cool thing is that Joshua, in the book of Joshua, we see a statement where he wrote the Torah on the standing stones, and while he was between Gerizim and Abel, he actually delivered the entire Torah to the Israelites, and it says he didn't leave out not one single thing that Moses had instructed him that was written in the Torah of Moshe. And so whatever God instructed Moses, I believe, was what we find written in the Torah. That's just my opinion. Oh, but what I was getting at with these talking about the oral law, modern Karaites have what's called, or the universal Karaite Jews, they have what's called the civil hayusha, which means the burden of inheritance, and that is basically an oral law. And you are required, if you follow or align yourself with the universal Karaite Jews, who claim to have universal authority for any Karaite anywhere in the world, which is nonsense. It actually violates the Torah to even make that claim. then you have to obey their idea of what's called civil Hayurusha. And that's clearly mentioned on their website.
Yeah, their idea of civil Yerusha is basically, you could say it's their oral law, but it's not. It's binding, but not in the same way. Not in the same way that the rabbinical oral laws. They don't believe it goes all the way back to Sinai or anything like that. It's basically the traditions they've built up, and their stipulation, at least officially, is that you're supposed to follow it as long as it doesn't contradict the Torah directly. But that's kind of silly, because putting on tefillin doesn't contradict the Torah directly. It's just a misinterpretation of the Torah. So they'll adopt a lot of, the Torah tells us, lo tosifu velo tigra'u, right? Don't add and don't take away and don't add to the Torah. You're not supposed to be adding to the Torah as well. And a lot of this Civil Yusha violates that commandment and adds to the Torah, attempting basically to make their standard form of rabbino-Karaism, closer to the Rabbinites than they would like to admit. So I always consider them somewhere between Rabbinites and Karaites, and a lot of it has to do with their Sebele Yehusha.
So here's a question from Mr. Regev. This is, I heard you mentioned you went to a synagogue. Do you still go to those, or do you have your own? Well, I used to frequent synagogues. I used to try to be nice with my rabbinite neighbors. And the last time I spoke with the rabbi, I was concerned about, I'm here. It's just my wife and myself. We wanted to become part of a community so that when the time comes and I'm buried, somebody can help with that or whatever. And so we asked to join the community. And they basically flat out said, you can't join us because you're Karaites. And so
Because
I
why?
decided, because I'm a Karaite. He said,
Oh,
you're
okay.
a Karaite. You can't be a part of our community.
Right.
And so I decided from that point on, the hell with them. I don't need them. I can purchase my own plot of land where I can be buried and have all that set up before time. But really, what do I need from them? Nothing. And no matter how much you the ass of the local rabbi, you're still just a piece of shit Karaite in his eyes. So.
Myself, I used to, I guess when I first became Karaite, I used to go still to rabbinical Bate Knesset, because I guess I was used to it, because I had been Orthodox for maybe 10 years before that. So, but now I don't think I could take it, honestly. It's just too painful to be in first of all, it's boring as hell most of the time. It's really boring. They recite the same canned prayers again and again and again. There's no innovation. There's no nothing. The only part I like, which is the Torah reading, only lasts on Shabbat and I guess Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Less than an hour.
Yeah, less than an hour. It's the only thing, and then it's all the rest of their boring prayers. And I don't know. It's not, it's not what I want to do in my life, is waste my time in a rabbinic synagogue hearing about useless things like the Talmud's opinion on this and the Midrash's opinion on that. I mean, I think back to some of the classes I attended in rabbinical yeshiva, and literally entire days of classes where I learned absolutely nothing relevant to the Torah. Just bizarre midrash, bizarre medieval, halacha, Shulchan Aruch, and Rambam, and midrash and Gemara, none of which had any relevance or very little relevance to the Torah. So I don't waste my time with these people. Whenever I study Tanakh, I feel like I'm spending my time well. Whenever I waste my time with rabbinites, except if I'm arguing with them or learning their texts in order to argue with them, in order to fight against them, then I have no use for them whatsoever. I just don't even waste my time anymore.
Yeah. So we have from Nicola a random question. What is the Karaite position on cremation?
I'll take that one to start off with. I mean, You don't see any instance of anything but burial. in the Tanakh unless the body's meant to be dishonored. So if it's dishonored, they'll say things like, they'll leave it outside the city walls for the animals to pick at, for the birds of the sky and the beasts of the field to pick at, or they'll hang it from the city walls, or defile it, as in the case of what was it? It was, I'm trying to remember now. It was Shaul, I think, where they cut off his thumbs and his toenails, and then hang his toes, and then hung his corpse from the wall of the city, and other things like that. But anytime that anyone gets a burial, or anytime that anyone dies, in the Tanakh, they're always buried. They're never cremated, or fired off into space in orbit around the earth, or anything like that. So I would say that although there's no explicit mitzvah in the Torah to bury, that the implication is, that you're buried, maybe based on the verse, in Genesis, is it 1 or 2? No, it's Genesis 3, where it says, from dust have you come, and to dust shall you return. So, but burial is definitely, without a doubt, the accepted way that a person is put to rest after he dies. So I would say that only burial is acceptable, even though it's not an explicit mitzvah. Yaakov, you want to take it?
Yeah, personally, I don't see anything wrong with cremation. I'm trying to think of, now, these aren't necessarily Israelites, but if you give me just a minute, I think it's in Ezekiel. I might be wrong. But there's a instance where it talks about some people being killed, and their bones were collected and burned. Of course, that's a little bit different than saying you burn the body. But personally, where is this? Maybe that was something else I read. Anyways, the way I look at it is basically you're gonna return to your elemental parts. That's what it means. You'll return to the dust, and all fire does is it speeds up the process of returning you to your elemental parts. And so I personally don't see nothing wrong with it.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm not saying
that's up to you.
I'm not saying that that's an explicit, mitzvah.
No, that's up to the person. That's up to the person. There's nothing that actually forbids it. There's actually nothing that says really anything about it other than we see the practices of what they did.
Yeah, but the practice was always burial, and that's what I'm trying to point out. That was the accepted way to put the dead to rest, was bury them, not burn them.
Well, it depends on the person. You burn some people in fire.
That was a punishment for ow. That was a punishment for for specific people, such as the daughter of a Cohen who played the who was promiscuous. But I mean, all the kings are buried. They're always buried in the tomb of They're always buried in the it says in the city of David, or whatever the case may be. No, everyone is buried.
Look at Joseph and Jacob both were embalmed and then put in.
I was going to point that out, but first of all, they were in Egypt at the time, so they were following the local custom, right? And second of all, eventually Joseph's bones were removed and brought to the land of Israel and placed in Shechem, or near Shechem.
Yeah. So the next question is, can you tell us a bit more about the World Alliance of Qara'im, who started the organization, and how many people are in it? That's very important to know, how many people are in it. Because unless we have hundreds of millions of people in it, it's not worth a crap, right?
Well, I mean, if we started it back, it was
2012, I think.
2012. It was started by a certain Hakham who's a very, very bright person, but who since left and became I don't know what he is these days, but he became a Samaritan. And basically, we gathered together a number of the people who were very active in Karaism, but who felt rejected or not able to express their true thoughts, ostracized or not comfortable with the standard Karaite world, which is very judgmental and it's almost like they're very controlling over what you're allowed to say or think. They claim to follow Karaism, and the most basic tenet of Karaism is a which means search well in the scriptures and do not rely on my opinion. But the fact of the matter is they don't practice what they preach at all. They're very controlling type of people, and they do not they really don't even entertain any dissent to their thought patterns, and that is not in the spirit of Karaism at all. And so more and more people were getting sick and tired of this kind of control over thought and speech. And so we said, okay, enough of you guys. And so it was this one person, Gershon, who started the World Alliance of Qara'im in 2012, and he invited a number of other people to join as Chachamim. I was one, Yaakov was one, there were a couple of others. Yaakov's wife was one. So that's how it started. We've been around since then. In terms of the Chachamim, there are just two Chachamim. That's me and Yaakov at this point. We're definitely open to finding more Chachamim to join us, and then whoever else is associated with us as people who listen to the studies and have interest in joining us. And by the way, we need to talk about that, Yaakov, because I have two people who've been annoying the heck out of me to try to join us in some kind of official way, and we really need to talk about it. We'll talk about it after we go off of there. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell. And I suggest looking at the manifesto.
Yeah, I posted a link earlier. So if you look in the comments in YouTube or in Facebook, wherever you happen to be viewing, I posted the link to our website, and you can read all about us. What are your general attitudes regarding the Zionist movement? I think one of the first Zionist movements was started by a Karaite.
That's right.
And it's called the Avodah Zion, which means the mourners of Zion. Yep. And I agree with that. In fact,
that's why the oldest synagogue in Jerusalem is the Karaite synagogue. Sorry, the oldest synagogue that's been continuously in use, although there was a period under the Crusaders where it was not in use, but for a little while, but has been essentially continuously in use, is the Karaite synagogue in Jerusalem. I'm
a little bit different.
Yeah, I'll just say very quickly, I myself consider myself an ardent Zionist, right-wing ardent Zionist who believes in, the fulfillment of the people of Israel, ultimately stretching from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates River and conquering all of that territory. However, I don't think that the current secular state is the vehicle to do anything like that. The current secular state, I've been saying for years, will eventually come to an end, probably in a huge ball of fire from its enemies, because if the state does not uphold the ways and the direction of the Torah, then it's only temporary, as anything and any entity that does not connect himself to the true God of Israel is only temporary. So I think the state of Israel it's done some nice things, but I think its time will very quickly come to an end and hopefully be replaced with a true Torah. And I don't mean rabbinically loyal government, a true Torah loyal government. That's my opinion in a nutshell. Yeah. And Yaakov, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I am definitely a Zionist. What do I mean by Zionist? Zion is the place where our Mishkan and Mikdash should be. And if you heard the first part of this study, then you heard my rant about the rabbinic failures. For 2,000 years, they've been praying 3 times a day, oh God, it'll be built in our day. And as soon as God gives them control of the land and of the Temple Mount, they say, oh, the hell with this. Let's give it back to our enemies. So they spit.
Well, in all fairness, it was largely the secular right? They usually blame it on Moshe Dayan, but
Yeah,
certainly there was a lot of religious input who felt that they were not ready
yeah,
to take over the Temple Mount.
yeah. Well, there's lots of it in there. One of the biggest things is we have this rabbinate, and when the temple is actually rebuilt, you will actually have a kahuna there. And so a lot of the influence of rabbinic authority will probably start to wane. And that's really what they're afraid of, is the loss of that authority. Because and you have to understand, there's the
It already has
Pharisaic
waned.
movement.
It already has waned.
Yeah, it was the Let's look at the situation we're in. Who is directly responsible for it? It was the Pharisees who rebelled against the Sadducees, the Hasmoneans, because of their erroneous idea that a Kohen Gadol couldn't also be a king. That's
No, that was
not
just the
correct.
excuse that was just the
That's the
excuse
excuse they
used.
used to
Yeah.
rebel. That's right. So they
Yeah.
rebelled against the Hasmoneans on that ground. That was the main ground. Okay.
Right.
Second, they invited the Romans. The Pharisees invited the Romans in. Not only did they invite them in, they opened the gates to Jerusalem to these people, and so that they murdered the Kohanim while they were at their duties. Okay, all to replace the current Kohanim and the kingdom with their own version of it. And what did what happened? It split the people. It ended up sending them into exile for 2,000 years, destroyed the priesthood as well as our Temple Mount. So
They
the last
basically were
exile
responsible
is on their shoulders.
They were basically responsible for destroying the Second Temple, and their agenda, I
Yeah,
believe, was to do so. And
absolutely.
the reason they wanted to do so was to remove the power from the Kohanim and the Levites, who were the correct
That's all it's
rulers
about.
over Israel, aside from the Davidic dynasty. I mean, the Kohanim and the Levites are the religious and sacrificial, rulers, leaders of Israel. And so the rabbis, in order to take over, knew that they had to remove this, this central locus. So I think they worked behind the scenes to basically encourage the Second Temple to be destroyed, so they could usurp power from the Levites and the Kohanim. It's
which is why in the 2nd century, after the destruction of the temple, the rabbis started a wholesale collection of the Yehosim from the Israelites, and they burned them. And they did it with intention, and the intention was that nobody could say what their lineage was, and so that no one could use their lineage as being over anyone else. Okay,
right.
And so all that was done by the rabbis. Wherever this rabbinic authority went throughout the world, they brought pogroms, they brought massacres and persecutions because of their garbage. The Karaites started spreading out. Okay, when they got to Europe, when they got to Turkey, I've got plenty of letters from Turkey, the Turkish Karaites, who wrote to the Turkish and say, "Hey, these guys are causing this trouble." Okay, when we get to Europe in Spain, we actually have rabbinic documents where they brag about tracking down Karaites and publicly beating them to death. All right. These are the rabbinic masters that people serve. So anybody who supports Talmudic Judaism supports the very traitors that destroyed the Second Temple and sent the people into exile for the last 2,000 years and are at this very moment responsible for the desolation of the Temple Mount.
That's right.
That's my opinion.
I'm curious, Guy Regev, what is your background and what's your interest in Karaism? Let's turn the tables on you.
You're more than welcome to come on here. Hang on, let me give you
or
the
you
invite.
Just type link. It in.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you the invite link, and you're more than welcome to come on here. Here we go. Give me just a second. It'll be posted there. So hit the link, and you can come on and tell us all about yourself.
If you want to. He doesn't have to come on. No pressure.
Nah, you don't have to.
Or just type in a sentence or two and let us know how'd you find us and what your background is. He said, write it all here. No, or you can come in and say hi if you wish.
Yep. Anyway,
he says, "Where do I click?" So give him the link.
I just posted a link
down below the StreamYard, where it's the StreamYard.
Here, I'll post it again. Look in the comment section. I don't know where it's going to be posted at, in the comment section somewhere. I just posted it again. I want to say something. We were talking about the Sybil Hayusha. Moshe Feruz wrote a letter to all the Hachamim of the community, and he was explaining the position of who a Karaite Jew is. And they say you can only be a Karaite if you accept the Sybil Hayusha.
Hello.
Hello, Shalom.
Can see me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So good to meet you guys. That was been listening the whole time. That's amazing stuff you guys been over. Good strong work.
Thank you.
Sorry about I got some kids in the background here too, but
no problem, man. Kids are welcome.
Yeah. So no, I've been I have a bunch of some Karaite related books. I don't think it's it's interesting what you guys have been saying about the different sort of groups that identifies Karaite. I wasn't aware of that, but I've had a few books for 10, 15 years probably, and I always had a certain affinity to it. I did see that early kind of Zionism and everything. There were connections actually with some Karaites. I think within there was some people that connected to some of the Escala kind of early Zionist guys in Europe. So I thought that was interesting. But anyways, I'm originally from Israel. I moved to the U.S. when I was 14 or so. And I'm
Awesome.
connecting
I can
here
tell
from
by the name.
yeah, and I'm connecting here from New York now.
Cool.
So where are you guys? Where are you guys at?
I'm in Germany, Munich.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I'm sitting outside southern Munich. It's okay. I've noticed lately there's been a pretty big exodus of Jews from Israel to Berlin and various places in Germany.
There's a
mainly because it's so tough there to live, man. It's just people make Aliyah and they have these delusions that this is paradise. We're going to get to go home and blah blah blah. And then when they get there, they realize how difficult it is. And if you're not really aware of the culture, man, that's a big culture shock. Anybody.
Yeah. From Israel to Germany or from Germany to Israel?
No, from anywhere in the world to Israel.
Oh, got it, yeah.
So they come to Israel. I know a lot of people here who made Aliyah and come back. They said, "Man, this is so expensive and so tough." And yeah.
So yeah, it's tough. Yeah. I heard there was this whole story a few years back with people moving to Berlin from Israel, and some of the stuff that they were comparing are the prices of some of the Israeli products in Germany, even, and some of them were cheaper, like in Berlin.
Yep.
So they were.
That's what I heard. The same thing, and they actually, at one time, a lot of the Jewish communities, like, and especially here in Germany, they were almost non-existent. They almost were almost empty. And then here in the last 10 or 15 years or so, most of them have returned. They've come back.
Right. And a lot of, and by the way, I have some family that did that too. We have some, brother-in-law's families, but also a lot of like Israeli restaurants and stuff in Berlin too. I was hearing. Right? Yeah, they just.
We have a few that closed down here in Munich, but I think they've got a bunch of them that opened up in Berlin.
Yeah. Back to some substantive questions here. What about? I guess I could read it on the site too, but I'm wondering kosher meat related things. What do you? What seems to be the most common practice within your movement there?
Kashrut, aside from what's actually written in the Torah, is basically rabbinically controlled. This to me is basically a racket. It's pretty expensive. A lot of it's really
Very
not
expensive.
necessary. And for me, luckily I live here where there's lots of Islamic halal shops, and the slaughtering by Muslims are very close to the slaughtering practices in kashrut, and they meet at least the Torah requirements. Now, the only thing I'm really careful of are the processed meats. I try to buy whole pieces of meat, usually the ribs, or something that wouldn't have to be given either to the Kohen, the Levite, or would have to that would be parts that you're not allowed to eat. And so I try to stick with that. There's whole meats that are not processed.
Hello?
And
we can see.
Okay, I'm back now.
That's interesting. Yeah, processed meats are bad for you anyways, right? So they got all these nitrites and stuff. So
we grind it ourselves. We have that. We have
really?
everything here that we can process and make it ourselves.
I'm personally a vegetarian, so I never have to deal with
That's even better. In fact, there's lots of Qara'im Hachamim who actually stated that it's not allowed to eat meat outside of the land of Israel in the diaspora. So
interesting. So how often do you guys do this type of discussion, talk, teaching here?
This once every Shabbat. It's usually it's 3 p.m. here in Germany. I don't know what time it'll be wherever.
Oh wow,
that'd be 9 a.m. New York time, I think.
Yeah, but it's every Shabbat, and I'm pretty much active throughout the week. Anytime during the day, whoever writes questions, I try to answer them as quickly as possible. But for this Torah study, this is a weekly thing.
Got it. Interesting. And but there are people here. So you're doing this from all across the world, basically. You're doing anybody can connect to it. Yeah,
for sure.
Very cool. So so I saw you guys. I saw the group on Facebook, so I just followed, and that's how I found you to answer your question from earlier.
Cool.
And then I have the sort of background from before.
Awesome.
Yeah, we've been battling this stuff out since I know since around at least 2005. It didn't. We started out on the old Pal Talk groups.
Oh really? Wow.
Yeah, remember?
Yeah, I've been a Karaite officially since 2001. That's when I officially came out as a Karaite.
Wow. Now, by the way, what is the process like with you two having become Chachamim? How does that process work?
In our case, go ahead, Yaakov. Yeah.
Yeah, the Hachamim. First, we have to look in the Torah. The Torah says, when they were talking about the judges, technically, or the Hachamim, says, Hava Anashim Hachamim. So bring men who are wise, or wise men, who are known and understood by your various tribes, and I'll make them leaders over you. So basically, the communities for the various tribes are allowed to pick and appoint their own, but these should be people who are already well known to be scholars of the Torah, and you're not really self-named or self-appointed. The way it actually worked, this is funny how it worked. He mentioned Gershom, who was one of the guys who founded our group.
He basically was the founder of the movement.
Yeah,
he was
very,
very brilliant guy, I must say. Whatever differences I have with the man.
He was a Hacham of a group called World Alliance, which was started by Meir Rechavi, who is the Hakham of the Universal Qara'im Jews of England, and also Nehemiah Gordon, who was the Hakham of the World Alliance movement. And so they appointed Gershom as a Hakham. And when Gershom decided to let's found this, then he basically met with us and spoke with us and determined that we were qualified to be Hachamim, and that's basically how it all got started.
To make a long story short, it was when Gershom founded the World Alliance of Qara'im in 2012. He asked a number of Karaites who he felt were known around the Karaite world for teaching. Yaakov was one of them. I was one of them. There were a couple of others. He asked us to join the World Alliance of Qara'im as Chachamim. So that's how we got our title. To make a long story short, so we didn't have to go to any school or anything like that. We were just known as Karaite teachers, online basically, and so that's how it started. And,
by the way, the groups I know in Israel, there are about 40,000 self-identifying Karaite Jews or so. Is that right?
They give the number
Roughly.
between 30,000, 50,000. I think the officially accept numbers 30,000, but whatever, something like that.
And are they part of a certain, I guess, group that you had mentioned earlier today? Are they part of the World Karaite Organization, something else?
They were part of the Karaite Jews of Israel originally. Sometime in the mid 1990s, early 2000s, they changed to the Universal Karaite Jews or Universal Karaite Judaism. Yeah. And basically, what they did was make a power grab. they basically tried to make the claim that they control everything Karaite, and they control all other Karaite communities in the world. And that's really what prompted our protest, because that's not only a violation of the Torah itself. It was never heard of in the history of the Karaite movement. Every community was basically independent, but they were cooperative. And but most of them in Israel, they would either be with the Universal Karaite Jews, or you have lots of Crimean Karaites who are basically secular.
What did you call the last part? The ones that were secular?
Those are Crimean Karaites. They come
Crimean.
from Crimea.
Crimean. They're from Crimea.
And most of them they're basically just secular. They don't care. Which a lot of Karaites.
I would say most Karaites.
Yeah, I thought they're all mainly secular.
Yeah, most Karaites are secular. The community is they're honestly not. Aside from a very small minority, they're not really interested in continuing the fight. Most of the 30,000 in Israel or 40,000 or whatever it is, really have no interest in really remaining part of the Karaite community. They marry out quite frequently to non-Karaites, and then they're lost to the community. The community is shrinking, and it's going to continue to shrink. There's a certain, I guess, small amount of small hardcore that is still interested in remaining Karaites, but I think as they become more and more assimilated into Israeli society, they're losing that distinction more and more. So I don't expect this group of Karaites, except for a very small core group, to be around for more than a generation or two, because they really have no interest in being so. They're more interested in just honestly in assimilating into Israeli culture, whether it be secular Israeli culture or rabbinical Israeli culture. They're not interested in really keeping up the fight, honestly.
The Karaites in name only.
And what are some of the main ways of continuing the fight for the, I guess, distinct and more authentic Karaite identity that you guys engage in?
For me, it's just not compromising at all. I'm not the type of person who likes to compromise, especially when it comes to quote unquote truth, what I believe the truth to be. I'm not going to for myself, and I know this applies for Yaakov, we're not going to compromise at all on the principles of charism, because we believe them deeply. The fact that the so many of the Egyptian Karaites is what we call them, the official Karaites, quote unquote, are so willing to compromise on their principles shows that they really don't believe them to begin with. But I think the difference is we're really ideologues.
Oh, guys, you guys would appreciate this painting, by the way, behind me.
See it. That is okay.
It's sort of a rendition of Yud, right? And Paleo
Yeah,
Hebrew.
awesome.
So you see the shared passion over here.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool, as a matter of fact. So, I mean, I don't know. I used to learn with a particular rabbi, and he always and he had a sidekick whose favorite expression was, "In the end, the extremists always win." So, and that's the way I like to think of it. I don't mean extremist in terms of like ISIS or something like that. Although they might win in the end, who knows? But extremists in terms of those who uncompromisingly stick to the principles. And in this case, I think those who are associated, with the World Alliance of Qara'im are uncompromisingly dedicated to sticking to the principles of charism. And the first and foremost principle of charism is really allowing people to think independently and speak independently, something which is not allowed under the
At all.
standard Karaite, the quote unquote official Karaite in the official Karaite world. If you go out of line, you're going to be attacked either, verbally, or I don't know. There was honestly a case in the early days when an outside Karaite, this is Mordechai Al-Fandari, tried to join the Egyptian Karaites, and they either threatened to kill him or they actually attempted to kill him. Seriously, this is part of Karaite history. They're not very open to really exploring the meaning of the Torah aside from what they're, what you're supposed to think as a Karaite, and that contradicts the whole idea of charism.
Right. By the way, in terms of members of the group, is there anybody in the New York area, for example, that you guys are aware of that's active in the in the alliance here?
In our alliance, no, but there are Karaites in New York. We have Hakham Melech, who's
well, he's in Albany, and he's
Albany,
it's a
it's a little bit upstate.
I was in New York, but I'm out of there. So we could have met up, but I'm nowhere to be found anywhere near there at this point. And there are a couple of others who I know. I have a very good friend in New Jersey, who's who's closely associated with us, but he's a kind of very private person, so I don't think he would be interested. So to make a long story short, no, we don't really have a community in New York. If this were a year or two ago and I was still back in New York, then we could have met up.
Oh, really? You were here a year or two ago? Interesting.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Coronavirus related move? No?
Quite complicated, but I really felt that I don't think America started feeling more and more like Germany in the 1920s to me, and I said, I better get out now.
I'm free here in Germany.
I think, right, you're saying 1920s, that's interesting. I think America's like probably Germany or Europe in like 1830s. And things are in some things, look, at the end of the day, in Germany, 1920s, even 1880s, 1890s, when Herzl's writing his books, he's writing about, every Jewish guy is a doctor and lawyer, and they can't get jobs here because nobody would hire Jews. So that's not quite the situation yet in the U.S., right? But we do see anti-Semitism on the rise, especially in college campuses and in, maybe more in the alt-right, the extreme left, those kind of things, BDS, those kind of things.
Right.
And so I feel like it's developing. Who knows? Within 20 years, 30 years, 50, maybe less, maybe more. I think will be like 1880s, 1890s Europe. I do see it, but anyways, that's why I say it's like
you have the cancel culture now.
Right. You have that, and you have. I'm doing, just so you guys know, I'm organizing an event, for example, for Israeli American parents, as part of an organization for Israeli Americans, and about anti-Semitism on campuses, trying to get them ready for it a bit, because what they're seeing is with BLM too, and honestly, I don't care about politics so much with BLM too. We're hearing a lot of reports from parents that a lot of anti-Israel kind of stuff against their children and on U.S. campuses is happening.
I would imagine, yeah.
So it's you're starting to see those types of things now, but a lot more.
I think the time frame is going to be much quicker than what you're saying, and I wouldn't have said that before the whole coronavirus thing, but I think the coronavirus, completely accelerated the situation. I think that the United States was a unstable society to begin with, and then the coronavirus and the associated economic, it's not even a recession, the deep depression
Right.
that America's seeing itself in, combined with the instability in the society to begin with, I think is going to ultimately rip the society completely apart. And
Right.
I think it's going to come more quickly than people expect. Things happen very fast. Things happen very fast. The United States right now is completely different from what it was a year ago. I mean, completely. There's almost no comparison. A year ago, there was no coronavirus. Donald Trump was president. People were still kind of living a semi-normal life, and now nothing is normal there anymore, as in so much else in the world. But that underlying that is a society that already was breaking apart for decades now. This kind of stress on an already unstable society is I think pushes it past the breaking point. So I see it only accelerating.
Yeah,
I could be wrong, but I see it
no,
only
I think that,
accelerating.
look, we're seeing it. Obviously, we're in France is one of the worst places for it now, right? That kind of anti-Semitic and exodus of Jews from there, and right before that, we saw it from Russia a couple of decades ago.
Right.
That they're finally allowed to leave. I mean, there's hardly any
Right.
Jews left compared to what the Jews that were there about 30 years ago.
Right. We shall see, but yeah, but I think things can change very rapidly, and I think that as soon as the money starts running out in the United States, everything's being propped up by the government right now. But how much can they just continue to print money without any consequences? How much can they continue? Can the stock market continue to be 30,000 or more? And Bitcoin 50,000 or more, and just all of these incredible bubbles. When people literally can barely pay their rent, when all businesses are shuttered. So everything is just being artificially propped up, and that's just I think it's a situation that's just right. It can completely and catastrophically collapse almost instantaneously. That's what I think. But I honestly hope I'm wrong, because I have family back in New York, so I honestly hope I'm wrong. But that's the way to do it. But yeah,
man, you guys are impressive with this timing. You guys have been on for 3 hours and 45 minutes. That's some stamina. This is like a wow.
When we get into Torah, it's hard to break off, but we should get going, actually.
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but now that you brought it up, I have to go.
Yeah, me too.
Well, appreciate you guys.
Normal is 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah, I'd say 3 hours, but usually we run a little bit over. But anyway, Guy, you're welcome to join us anytime.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much, guys.
You're welcome to. Yeah, absolutely. Welcome anytime. Same time each Shabbat. It would be 9 a.m. New York time.
Very good. All right, guys.
Okay. So,
all right,
Shavua Tov.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, then.